Welcome, one and all, to episode 58 of the Look Out Sir Warhammer 40,000 podcast. A Warhammer 40,000 podcast which is made, produced and developed and delivered by an assortment of friends who love talking about Warhammer 40,000 because we're addicts and we don't know any better because somehow we managed to live long enough and or secure an ongoing arrangement where a lifelong addiction to small toy soldiers has not entirely crippled our ability to interact in the real world that exists outside of this hobby. Not that we would know, because we are truly immersed and or enveloped within its warm, soft bosom. Another topic of warm, soft bosoms I could be talking about only my good buddy Phil. How's it going, Phil?
Good. My bosom is warm, I guess.
And soft, my friend. Squishy, I would say.
Yes, it is. I'm going to say yes on this one.
There you go. You're going to just concede and go along for the ride. How's it been going, though, Phil? What have you been up to, mate? What's happening in the wondrous world of Phil these days?
Well, I have been vigorously knocking it out the park.
Bold statements. Knocking what out the park?
Well, exactly. I've been painting up a couple of Lehman Russ tanks and a couple of tank commanders and a couple of little troops that I took from my Centaur artillery tank that are going to sit on top of the tank, riding on the back like the boys that they are.
Nice.
Yeah, basically I'm making a few little last-minute painting additions to my no-retreat army that's happening in about 3 weeks' time, or maybe 2 weeks by the time this comes out.
Sounds to me, Phil, like we probably need a segment on this show talking about your army list and or no retreat in the general sense, right?
Oh, yeah, took the words right out of my mouth. So, spoilers ahead, that might be happening.
Well, I doubt it's a spoiler, Phil, because almost certainly it will be illustrated within the description and potentially within the title of the episode.
Well, it won't be, because our number one star of the show is going to be in big titles. He's insisted on it, on the artwork, on the thumbnail. It's just his name, all in bold, and a picture of him. That's it.
Is it an actual picture of him, or is it a picture of his, persona within game?
Probably his persona, or I'm going to just Google Imperial Fist Captain and see what comes up, and I'll stick that on there.
That probably works. That probably works pretty well. I mean, it's actually surprising how much legality goes into getting a man of that kind of caliber onto the show. I mean, he's got full approval rights.
There was a rider.
There was a rider, absolutely. We had to supply him with Greg's, cheese and onion pasties and for some reason some iron brew. I don't know why that was. He seemed to have a thing for iron brew at the time. I can't entirely remember why, but it definitely came up in conversation.
For sure. And we had to send him a couple of fluffy kittens in a box.
What was he doing with those fluffy kittens? Did he actually say?
He wouldn't say. No,
he wouldn't say. He just wanted them for his own, malicious purposes, or entirely harmless purposes, I suppose. We shouldn't probably suggest that he wanted to do ill things to those cats.
Exactly. And who are we talking about for the listeners that maybe somehow made it this far without checking the title of the podcast that they're listening to?
Well, indeed. We could be talking only about Chapter Master Valrak, which is one of the most grandiose titles that someone can give themselves on the internet, isn't it? It's a bit crazy that he addresses himself, or rather, he doesn't really address himself that way. Obviously, he doesn't. He's a very down-to-earth, lovely human being in reality, but he's obviously gained the fictional title of Chapter Master Valrak, so elevated beyond just regular Valrak to Chapter Master status. I mean, it's quite an incredible accomplishment on his part there, but I mean, I think it's indicative of his place within the community, what he's done, and how quickly he's kind of risen to notoriety. I mean, he's been, based on the conversations I've been having with him, grinding away at it for a long time. It's one of those things that, it feels like he's just kind of appeared out of nowhere, but according to him, he's really been working at it for a long time, and it's a real sort of passion for him. And it was great getting him on, because I think it's just nice, actually, to get someone on the show as a guest who isn't just all about the gaming necessarily. I mean, obviously, Winters had a weird happy medium, because Winters is obviously a bat rep producer but he's also a really fluffy, awesome person to play games against. So he's much more about the fun, exciting aspects of gameplay. But usually when we get people on is to talk about like tournament performances or talk about, some element of competitive play. So to have someone like Valrak on who really doesn't care about any of that and just talk about the lore, talk about fun projects that he's working on, painting, and just his general experience with the hobby. I mean, it's really nice actually to sort of kick back and talk general hobby with someone. And that's what we kind of do in that segment. We don't really have a huge agenda. We just talk about hobby and see where it goes. I don't know why I emphasized hobby the way I did there. It sort of took on a weird tone, but I'm going to leave it in. We talk about hobby. So that was nice, wasn't it, Phil?
Oh, it was indeed. It was interesting on the bit where you mentioned about the sort of self-titled, he's a chapter master. It's like someone referenced me one time with a title in the kind of Krieg ranks.
Oh, really?
They called me the Watchmaster, and I was like, oh, the Watchmaster, I like it. This could be my new name. And then I realised that Watchmaster is basically the rank of sergeant, and I was like, oh. But still, it sounded cool at the time, but it's not quite chapter master level, is it?
No, not quite. But I mean, it's better than what you are currently, Phil.
Which is just Phil.
It's just Phil. Just the nothing.
Exactly.
Although, if you were to give yourself like a beginning to your name, would it be Watchmaster Beyond the Tabletop, or would it just be Watchmaster Phil?
I think in this instance, it would have to be Watchmaster Phil.
I mean, something so underwhelming about that.
Yeah, because Beyond the Tabletop is just like the name of my website and the channel. It's not really my name per se. And you can't really shorten it to like a nickname. You can't be like Valrak.
No.
So, yeah.
Because I suppose if you abbreviated it, it could be Boot. But I suppose that's not much good, is it? Watchmaster Boot?
Yeah. Then it just sounds like Butt, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? If you called it Beyond Ultimate Tabletop, I mean, that could have worked, couldn't it?
Well, exactly.
Then you could have been Watchmaster Butt. Ha 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 ha! Ooh, the humour comes at you thick and fast from here. Ooh. Anyway, so you've been working on Krieg tanks and you've been doing all that sort of stuff. You had much of a chance to get much playtesting in, do any gaming for this No Retreat tournament coming up in a few weeks?
Well, I did, but all my playtesting was for my Minotaurs because, back in the early summer days, I was full of confidence that I was going to finish up my 2,000 point Minotaurs army, having painted about 600 points worth. So that hasn't quite happened, and there was about a month to go before the event, and I was like, okay, I really not, this isn't going to happen, because the level that I want to have my Minotaurs army painted at, I can do in that speed, and I didn't really just want to rush it for the sake of rushing it. So I was like, actually, I'll park that, but I'll just paint up some new stuff. So all the 9th edition games I played have all been with Minotaurs, and that was probably over a month ago now. So I haven't played anything with my Krieg in a while.
Do you feel like it'll be, slipping into an old pair of shoes, some nicely worn in, comfortable footwear where you're, completely at peace and at home in your entity, in your being, as it were?
I think so for the most part. There's probably a couple of stats here and there that I've forgotten, and, even in the segment later on, who knows if I get anything wrong. But I think on our most part, it's like I do remember the rules. For the Krieg, I know what I'm doing with the orders and stuff. Obviously, there's a couple of new stratagems from Psychic Awakening that I've not ever used, but I'm aware of them, and like the tank cases. So there are some new stuff to play around with. Obviously, there's also, I think, maybe the more fiddly part is choosing the correct secondaries for my army. So that will be something to sort of play test out, I think, a little bit if I get time to do that, which I hope I do.
Yeah, I'm sure you will, man. I mean, you and I are definitely going to get together and throw some dice somewhere between now and your trip to Gibraltar. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, right? But it was really cool to chat through your army list with you and have a bit of a sort of insight on what you're thinking. I mean, I don't want to spoil that segment, although it's fair to say we accidentally talk about missions probably for a bit too long at the start of it, but once we get into the mix with it, it starts to get quite interesting. So I think Yeah, I think it's a cool segment to go over it again, and obviously it's the perfect Phil segment, right? It's talking about No Retreat, which is, you know, your most beloved tournament event that you love talking about, and the Krieg, which obviously, as everyone knows, is also one of your favourite things to talk about. So it was the ultimate Phil segment, the ultimate Watchmaster butt section.
Yes, if it wasn't for Valrak, we could probably call it the Phil show.
We could do.
But it's for Valrak show under contract, so we can't change that.
Yeah, exactly. I'll still, we'll have to send him even more Greg's pasties and or Iron Brew to satisfy his legal requirements, I suppose. But no, I mean, yeah. So I mean, on my side of things, I mean, I've been playing a few games, which is cool. Richie came over last weekend, which was super awesome. So I threw some dice with Rich, which was great fun. So it was Ultramarines versus Richie's Imperial Fists. Obviously, they're Ultramarines because I've got Ultramarine characters, and I intend to paint them Ultramarines one day, but they're not Ultramarines presently because they're just regular Primaris Marines sprayed Mechanicus Standard Grey. So I've got a ways to go before officially quantifying them as actual real Ultramarines. But, you know, there is a Roberte Gilliman and or Chief Librarian Tigerius in that army. So they're very Ultramarines, except when you look at them, I guess. But, you know, everyone's got to start somewhere, right?
Well, exactly. They'll be painted blue eventually, because they were grey right originally because they were going to be a custom chapter.
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
So what's made you break with the trend of custom chapters and go down the specific route of Ultramarines?
Just because I don't care anymore about competitive play that much. It's like, the thing is, right, is like doing things to optimize and doing things for tournament play is a bit of a, you know, it's a bit of a road to nowhere. I've sort of come to this point now where I was the best at playing 40k when the Elder just happened to be good, right? It's like, I was really good at playing Elder. I love my Elder army. And that Elder army got really good in 2018. And as a result, I did really well with them in 2018, early 2019. But then what you discover is so much stuff changes so quickly. And then you find yourself in a situation where you've got all these models that you've painted like in a really sort of specific way to, you know, exploit certain types of rules. But then you find yourself in a situation where you're like, oh, I just don't really love it because it's just a really boring colour scheme and there's no heritage to it and there's no history. It's not like I've sat there and crafted a narrative that fuels this army. It's just generic colour scheme that allows me to use it as whatever I want to use it as. And I just find that really unappealing because at my core, I am a really, you know, invested narrative person. You know, I love 40k not just because of competitive. I love it because of 40k, and I think there's something really cool about collecting an army with Roberte Gilliman in it. And, you know, I was thinking, I could paint Roberte Gilliman a generic colour scheme. But then I'm like, but then it's not Roberte Gilliman, it's some other weird adaptation of Roberte Gilliman. And then you start getting into this whole sort of thing where you're like, then he, you know, I take him with armies that he doesn't belong in because he's the Ultramarines Primarch. He should be with the Ultramarines. So if I'm going to paint him blue, which I've started doing, then I may as well paint everyone that goes with him blue. And also as well, I obviously I've got my Blood Raven army now as well. And that's really kind of fulfilled the generic Space Marine requirement for me. So I've sort of satisfied that. I've got my generic Marines. So it's nice to have that. And I'm painting more stuff up as Blood Ravens as well, just to have that as my generic colour scheme. So I like the idea of having a few specialisms. I want to do my Dark Angels at last. I've been talking about Dark Angels for ages, so I want to get that done. And I want to do the Ultramarines, because I really love the Ultramarines characters. I really like Gilliman as a model. I really like Tigerius. And Primaris Marines just feel like they should be Ultramarines to me, because it seems like all Primaris Marines started out life as Ultramarines, so it just sounds like the natural conclusion. Is the way it goes. But I've also been doing some other painting stuff. I was saying to Phil before that I painted a Vindicare assassin for a friend of mine's son. I made the mistake of a work function about a year ago saying to my friend's son, who's a massive 40k fan, that I'd be glad to paint something for him just to be like a nice gesture to a nice kid who was, really excited to meet a grown-up that also likes 40k for whatever reason. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll paint you something, mate, no worries. And then apparently my mate has had his son bugging him for the best part of a year now, going, when's he going to give me this model he promised me? And it's like, oh, yeah, whoops. So, yeah, I took the time to paint a Vindicare assassin because I got a load of them because they used to be really good to take in multiples and now not so much. So, yeah, I was like, and also they're black, right? So black's relatively easy to paint. So I didn't really go to town on the black on it. I just sort of, I basically airbrushed it with Corvus black and then just painted all the details around it, essentially. And a lot of the work I find with the Vindicare assassin gets done with the base. Basically, you just do a really good job of painting the pillar that sits behind it, and then make sure that the visor looks good, and you've basically got a great-looking miniature. So, yeah, I sort of cheated. I half-assed the effort, but I think it looks good. I'm sure it'll be one of the nicest miniatures he has in his collection. So that's enough of an accolade there. So that's what I've been up to. Fun.
Nice.
Yeah. So, in the tradition of things, we should probably do one of our 5-star reviews. And because Phil is here and he's going to be talking about Krieg, I may as well highlight a review from Sweden from a guy called Minnesson, or Minnesson, Minnesson, so something like Minnesson. Again, always with the Swedish fans, they always have the weirdest names to pronounce, but, here's what it is. But anyway, his review reads, for the Krieg, 5 stars. The best background noise out there. Great company when trying to make some painting progress on my wolves. Wolves aren't any sort of type of Krieg, are they? They're not a specialist group of Krieg called the Wolves.
No, not at all. So he must be talking about those generic Space Marines.
He's going Space Marines. So he's used the word Krieg to invoke, some kind of emotional response from us, but then revealed that he's actually just a Space Wolf player.
Well, it might be he was a Krieg player, and this is like a second army, perhaps.
Perchance.
Maybe.
He did include a / Panzer Tank WW2, as if that may be some kind of link to maybe his Instagram or whatever. So it's basically Panzer Tank, all one word, except for the fact he's replaced the N in tank for an H, which I assume he's done because someone already probably owned the name Panzer Tank World War II. But yeah, it's Panzer Tank, so TAHK WW numeral 2. So he's put that in there, assumingly to plug an Instagram or something. We don't know. We haven't verified it. We haven't actually checked or looked to see if it's actually a thing, because typically we only really, read these reviews in huge detail when we, record these segments. Partly because we like the weird bants that comes about from us making mistakes and not quite absorbing the content correctly. But yeah, if that is a thing, that is a thing. So why not try and check that out? But Phil, he's given a 5-star review for the Krieg. Would you please thank Mindsson from Sweden?
Well, thank you, Mindsson from Sweden. You've done an excellent job. You've taken the shilling to the max, like we like on this show. You've ticked that box of the Krieg. You know we're going to plug you because of that. And then you've promoted probably a hot link that goes to some adult website. Like, who knows? But thank you very much. We're checking out afterwards. We'll put a link in so everyone else can as well.
Indeed.
Well done. I hope your Space Wolves. I guess I hope they do well with your painting. They're not Krieg, so good luck with that.
Indeed. I love the fact that you've just sort of said in a sentence, we assume this links to some kind of adult website, and then we've just said, but we'll link it anyway. Who cares?
Why not? I mean, there is let us do some due diligence after this and check it out before we put the link in, just in case.
What sort of weird adult website would have Panzer tanks as the? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who get emotional about Panzer tanks, I guess.
Well, exactly.
Maybe. Seems very distasteful, I suppose, but I mean, who knows? Anyway, there you go. So look, guys, we're going to move on to the next segment. So the way it's going to work in this episode, we're going to have Valrak join us in a conversation. We don't really have a huge agenda for this conversation. It's just us shooting the breeze with Valrak, so we'll see where that develops into. And then once that's concluded, myself and Phil are going to talk through his No Retreat army for No Retreat 9, so his Death Corps of Krieg army for No Retreat 9. And we're going to see how all that comes together. But we hope you enjoyed the show, guys. If you'd consider leaving your own 5-star reviews, obviously we'd love it if you did. Equally, if you want to consider subscribing to us, maybe liking, doing anything out there that could be super helpful, because obviously it's all really good for the show, helps us grow and succeed and become the best darn Warhammer 40,000 podcast we can hope to be. But with that said, everybody, we're going to transition now to our interview with Valrak. Thanks very much, guys. Woo! Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. In this part of the podcast, we're going to be talking to one of those people that goes on the internet and says a bunch of stuff about the things Warhammer community is doing. No, it's not that guy with the pink hair. It is only the great Chapter Master Valrak. How's it going, bro?
I am doing good, mate. Welcome.
Thank you for welcoming to my own show.
Why welcoming? Yeah, why am I welcoming you?
It's all right, man. It's all right. I understand that. Obviously,
I'm not used to doing these. You see, that's the people on my shows. So yeah,
exactly, man. Exactly. Well, obviously, it was never going to work the other way around because ultimately, we're not going to be coming to your domain. We're too small, too mediocric, too insignificant to
need Primaris releases to get on my show. That's what it is. If you bring new Primaris releases, you can get on it.
Well, that's it, man. I've got a few, Phil's doing a beautiful Minotaur's army all primarified, aren't you, Phil?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's currently on pause, but I was cracking on at a fair old pace.
Phil is, by far and away, Valrak, one of the slowest painters you can ever encounter. Good quality, but very slow, as it were.
Slow is steady and steady is smooth.
Well, that's it, man. That's it. But it's taken him, 6 months of lockdown to paint 9... in curses.
Well,
not in curses.
It probably took best part of a month, maybe
Shut
2
up.
months.
It took you a month to do the cables.
No, I started and then I paused for ages while I tried to work out what I was doing with some bits, and then I carried on.
Fair enough.
And then also in lockdown, I built a bunch of it, so I've probably got 2,000 points built, but yeah, painted a quarter of that.
It's true.
That's good then.
It's a beautiful looking army, though, man. It's a thing of wonder. Should you ever get to behold it, and obviously, you yourself, my friend, you're obviously known for your Primaris armies, your speculating about Primarchs on the internet. And obviously, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, mate. Obviously, thank you very much for dropping in and taking the time. I know you insisted on coming on board because you're obviously such a huge fan of the show, right?
Massive, absolutely massive. I've got your t-shirts and everything.
Yeah. We don't have any t-shirts. Obviously as well, you're such a fan of the show that you've immediately, noticed and are obviously questioning, where's Joe, obviously, right?
Yeah, where is Joe?
Where is Joe? Well, unannounced to you, obviously, the hope is and the pitch is that maybe you'll consider taking his place.
That's it, yeah. Right, Joe's at the door. Hey, everyone, it's me now. I'm taking over. I'm the captain.
To be fair, that is a pretty spectacular offer, Phil. We've hit the big time, mate.
Yeah. If you bring all your listeners across, it's a done deal. Joe is out that door.
Phil, you're not supposed to point out the obvious reason why we've got him on the show. It's not supposed to be clear to people.
You both like it. He's a nice old chap.
Poor Joe.
But no, so randomly, through random happenstance, I had the good privilege and pleasure of talking to Valrak recently because, life, the universe, and things in between. And when we were talking, I was like, you know what, man, you should come on this show and, just spit with us for a bit and see what's going on and have a bit of a general bants, as it were. We're not a very structured broadcast, as our listeners know, and we're not very, good at keeping on topic at the best of times. So we're going to try and get a little bit of an insight from Valrak, get a little bit of an update from him, talk a bit about your grudge matches, your army lists, your general passion points within the hobby. I think, obviously your fan base have a great understanding of that, but maybe, just maybe, through the long format medium of a, maybe hour-long conversation with us, they'll find out things about you they may not have known, right?
Sure.
Without getting into the grisly details, though, obviously. We don't want to be telling them the where the bodies are buried, right?
Yeah, I'm down for anything. Let's learn it. Let's just do it. Let's just do it.
Awesome,
some dark secrets.
Awesome. So what have you been up to lately, man? What's going on with you? I've seen you all over the interwebs. What have you been doing?
Well, working on my Primaris is one thing. The Last Wall, I think, well, a lot of people who know me now will know me from the Last Wall stuff. I'm currently doing the Templars, which have been massively requested. But I've been waiting and holding out. Hopefully that Primaris will get some melee options, and we eventually did.
They delivered, man, and they delivered in style, man. Those Blade Guard are bonkers. You ever got those guys off in a charge?
I haven't actually played with them yet. I'm just built the assault ones now, but I've heard they are pretty good.
It's
an understatement. But yeah, it's a taster. Let's say
it's a beautiful thing when it all happens, man. And I think obviously as Black Templars, I mean, obviously it's even more likely to happen, right? Because they're still re-rolling charges, right?
Well, the way I play with my Last Wall is that I play it as an Imperial Fist.
Oh,
like it's just, even though it's themed the way it is, the key word is Imperial Fist, because as much as I would love to play with it, like, well, those guys are Black Templars and those are in Crimson Fists. You're not allowed to do that. So
you can mix it up, man. You can mix it up.
I could do that, but
if you could have all the different chapters represented, and because they're all Space Marines, they still keep their doctrines. They just don't get their super doctrines.
Super Doctor is the best thing.
Well, that's true. I suppose when you're getting +1 damage, it's pretty legit.
That first one, yeah.
Yeah, man. Have you got lots of like Hellstorm missiles on stuff? Right, that's the trick to that super thing. You just get lots.
Well, for me now, it's just heavy weapons. Do you know what I'm invested in more than anything now? It's just bolters. Just bring every bolter you can in an Imperial Fist force. Like I did a bat rep against a channel called Hellstorm Wargaming a couple weeks ago. And
come on, Mikey. He's a good boy. Don't be besmirching him on our channel, mate. He's a good lad.
Yeah, and I brought how many? I think I brought 50 intercessors, and 30 of them were the auto bolters. So 30 shots for them, and 20 just stalk bolters. And he was just ripping tear. He just couldn't deal with the amount of DACA that was being pumped out. It was just amazing.
It's a hideous thing, man, when those boys get going with the amount of shots they get. Like, the thing that amazes me about Imperial Fists is when they roll a bunch of dice, and then they take out a bunch of misses, and then they put them all back in again because of the amount of sixes they roll. It's like, oh, good.
That's it. It's like, yes. Oh, look, all these misses. Nope. Wait, look, all these sixes.
I shot 30 times, and I hit 36 times. But you missed 4 times. Yeah, well, what are you going to do? It's the craziest thing, man. Are you rocking the Centurions at all? You're just keeping it all Primaris, right?
I keep it fully Primaris. I like to do a theme for, so I'm just doing it. Like, I'm not really into, like, the competitive, so, like, to get the most out of my armor.
Yeah.
I just go for the rule of cool. And the way I'm doing it is just Primaris Marines, so I'm just keeping it. Unless GW want to do, like, Primaris Centurions at one point, then yeah, I'll be down for that. But
it feels like the aggressors pretty much satisfy that brief, right? I mean, who knows what's around the corner with those things, but no, man, it's interesting, dude. I mean, the Primaris range, right? I mean, people who listen to the show will know that I was quite critical about the lore around Primaris when it started, right? Like, I wasn't the biggest fan of the narrative thread that they decided to take, because I kind of just wanted them to go, you know what? They're just Space Marines in bigger armor, and I would have been totally cool with that because that seemed like a cool thing. But then, bizarrely, as the narrative is developing, I'm starting to become quite a convert to it because I kind of like the potential that it represents.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat as you. Like, when it came out, I thought it was okay. I thought it was a bit tongue in cheek, like, oh, Gilliman's about to do this, or he's about, the Black Legion's about to do something, and then, out of nowhere, all these Marines come out of, like, the ground. I was like, okay, that's a bit strange.
Yeah.
But now, like, we've been getting the books, and the authors have been fixing it, like, when it comes to the lore. Like, the latest one, the Dawn of Fire one, by Guy Haler, that really opened your eyes to it, like, what it's like for them to come out, and
I mean, without getting into the
behind it and
spoilers.
everything. Yeah, I don't want to get into spoilers, but it's a really good, really good book. I really enjoyed it, and it's set like a lot happens in that book, but I think it's setting the foundations for the rest of it, because that's going to be like, well, they describe it as like the new heresy now or something like that, haven't they? Like that kind of genre of like books and stuff. So I think they set the groundwork.
They sort of fixed the problem with Ninth that they created with Eighth, because Eighth was, as you said, there's all these Primaris, and there's this Indomitus Crusade, and it's kind of all over now. That wasn't that fun. And then in Ninth edition, they've gone, actually, no, that was a really cool setting. Let's go back. And actually explore it and sort of reset the clock.
And, that was my complaint. It was like the Indominus Crusade, and it was like it lasted 116 years, and it's over. I'm like, okay, then.
They did the same with the Fall of Cadia, didn't they? It's like, here's the Fall of Cadia. Everyone was so excited and go, oh, this is brilliant. We're going to all play the Fall of Cadia. And it was like, oh, actually, it's all happened now.
When is the events of the Eye of Terror campaign from 4th edition going to play out? Because that actually was supposed to be set in the future. Like, whatever happened to that? That just came and went.
Swept under the carpet.
Oh, is it? We're in an alternate timeline now. This is the new Star Trek. The Romulans have broken through, and now we're in the whatever world, as it were. Which is all good, as it were. By the way, I've been watching a lot of Star Trek recently. Not that I want to get into that whole world of fun, but
I haven't watched Star Trek since first generation, let's say. I haven't really been into it since then.
It's weird. I was never into it, but I just recently discovered it because I've seen enough people on the internet complaining about the new Star Trek that I thought, well, I kind of feel like I owe it to myself to watch the stuff that people say is good. And it's fantastic, to be fair.
Do you know what show I actually got into, which is, it's kind of like Star Trek, but it's not. It's, is it called The Orville?
Yeah, The Orville. Yeah, with Seth MacFarlane.
I wasn't really, like, when I saw the trailer for it, I was like, oh, this is just going to be like Family Guy in space, where it's just like crude jokes all the way through. And I watched, and I was like, no, this is actually really good kind of sci-fi stuff. It's, it is a bit of jokes in there and stuff like that, but it's actually pretty decent. I was like, oh, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah, but the thing is, they've got to shoehorn in the odd joke here and there just to remind you that it's the Family Guy guy doing it. It's like, get one of the jokes in. I mean, obviously, I suppose that's actually a nice segue in some respects, though, man, because obviously you're really well known, and I think this is, and it's evident by how these guys kind of respect and credit you in their work. I mean, you've done a lot of amazing things for putting spotlights on creators doing incredible like animations and incredible movies within the 41st millennia. I mean, how did that all start coming about? Was it just literally you just loved this stuff and you just wanted to talk about it, or what was the what's the thought process there?
Well, it's a bit of both, really. Like, I remember like when before you know what a start. Everyone knows a start is by now, don't they? Everyone knows start is. I remember he emailed me before he had no subscribers or anything, and he was like, "Hey, I really like your channel. Would you mind if I send you some of my stuff? You can talk about it because I'm been really working hard on this, and hopefully it'll entertain the community." And I was like, "Yeah, send it, man." And he sent it, man. And I was like, "Whoa, mate!" I was expecting something, cool. But when I saw what he sent me, I was like, "My good God, this is like a film." I was like, "Yeah, mate, this is amazing. This is gonna blow up." And when I did the video about it, and he sent me like a 10-second clip of like a guy shooting his gun and like something, I think it was something to do with a knife or something. And I remember some of the comment section like, people saying, "Oh, this looks boring. I can't see this going anywhere." And I was like, just you wait. And as soon as he released it, it just blew up. So but stuff like that, I get people sending me stuff. But another stuff, I actually like if I come across something, I always like email the creator and say, "Hey, I love your content. Do you think I can like do a video on it and like bring it out and stuff?" And they say yeah, so I say cool. Then we do it, and then a lot of attention goes their way. So if I can help out anyone, I'll help out anyone. Yeah, it's just one of them things. If I see something I like, I'll try and put people towards it. Like, check this out, it's awesome.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's really incredible that you're kind of putting that forwards, man. Because it has to be said, right? I mean, I kind of introduced you as that other guy who does comments on the Warhammer community, because it felt like to me that you and oh god, I always forget his name when I need to remember it.
Kirov,
thank you. It's like Yeah, it's like you guys came on the scene to me anyway, a similar kind of time, and it's funny because like I was saying to this to you when we first chatted. I was like, at first I wasn't massively loving your stuff, as it were. I was just kind of like, oh, he seems like an upbeat, happy chappy talking about 40k, cool. And then it was one of those weird things that if anyone had asked me or anyone said to me, it's like, oh, you watching Valrak stuff? And I'd be like, yeah, now and again. But then it was like one of those weird like moments where I realised that like I've watched all of it, and I was like, Christ, like there's obviously something that you kind of
I just bury into your brain.
Well, exactly, man. Like I feel like, but it's obviously something that you're doing in terms of your attitude or your general kind of approach to it that's sort of unlocked a really amazing formula that no one really has sort of tapped into within our community before, and I think that's really cool to see, man. It's just, I think people responding to your positivity and your love of it is just amazing, because you know, that's how we all feel about it, really. I mean, even when we grumble about it, we still love it, right?
I remember, like, when I started my channel initially, it wasn't really covering news or anything like that. I actually started with a game called Eternal Crusade, and I didn't expect the channel to go the way... All I did, really, is just upload videos of me playing the game with friends, like compilations of, like, you know, killing Eldar and stuff and doing squad-based gameplays. But of course, Eternal Crusade went where the dodo and basically just died. So
yeah, because that was the MMO one, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that's what they marketed as, but it was just like a hobby shooter, really. Like there was nothing MMO about it at all. And
it was going to be an MMO.
Do you know what? I love and I hate that game at the same time, because I love it because of all the awesome stuff that I have, like meeting friends in there. But I hate it because what it could have been. And they had it in their hands and they just let it slip. It's like, this could have been amazing. But yeah, like after that finished, I was like, all right, yeah, no worries. You know, there's nothing really out there for you to play. And then I just read the Gathering Storm when that came out. And I did a video about Rebooty returning. And that exploded. And I thought, oh, what if I cover more like the lore and like what's going on in like the new edition and the news and stuff? And it just went on from there. And like I've asked people like what attracts you to my channel, because like I don't have like the production quality of like Luton. Like if you look at Luton's videos, his is like top tier A content. He goes in, he does like all the music, his nice subtle voice when he talks, and all the editing. I'm basically just sat here going, all right, everyone, how you doing? And they're like, well, yeah, but that's what we love, because it's just like sitting across the table from a friend and it's just talking 40k. That's all it is. I was like, yeah, that's all I want it to be, really. I don't expect it to be more than that.
Yeah, people...
I just want to keep it at that.
People respond really well to that, though, man. I mean, I think bizarrely, and obviously, you know, it feels insanely, you know, ridiculous to try and compare ourselves to yourselves in terms of size and stature, but regardless of that, right, I mean, you know, we're always really grateful and happy with the kind of fan base that we attract, because we know we're not for everyone, right? We know that, I mean, we put out a podcast the other week, or like a month ago, that was 6 hours long, right? We talked about orcs and stuff for 6 hours. And I remember sharing it with a guy, and he was like, what did you talk about for 6 hours? And I was just like, 40k? like, you know, and it's like...
happens, though. That's what happens. It's just one of those things. You can talk, you can literally talk about 40k for hours.
I know, right?
When I do my streams and stuff, I have to set myself a time limit. I say, right, I'll do like an hour and a half every day, because if I don't, then I'm just sat there for like 3-4 hours just talking 40k with people, and it's like, oh, just waste all my night and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, I have to set a time limit. But yeah, there's just so much to do and so much to talk about. It's awesome. I love it. I just love everything about it.
I think friends and family are always perplexed about how much we just like on our podcast talk about 40k, let alone like the times when we're just phoning each other to also talk about 40k.
Yeah.
But that's where this came from for us, right? We were just literally like, we talk about this stuff as mates all the time. So let's just put our voices on the internet and roll the dice, as it were. But, you know, I mean, obviously, you know, we're really happy with where we're at and stuff. And I think, you know, that's the important thing, right? It's like, do it because you love it. And, you know, if people respond to that, then you'll grow accordingly. And, you know, ultimately, not everyone is destined to break through and achieve huge success. But then if that's the reason you got into it, I kind of question the motives anyway. I think it's one of those things where, you know, ultimately you got to do it because you care about it, and I think that does resonate with you, man. I mean, that was the thing that genuinely, from my side of things, as someone who watches your stuff and engages with it, to answer your question in terms of what it is that sort of attracted me to it, it was that thing where it was like, well, obviously the algorithm was in your favor because they served it to me all the time, and obviously I was clicking on it because I was liking it. But it took me a while to subscribe to you because I was like, yeah, it's all right, but I'm not sure I want to subscribe to this guy yet. And then it just all clicks into place at different points. And you're like, well, I kind of got to now because every time a video comes up, I'm watching it. Because the thing I like is you save me reading a community article 9 times out of 10. I'm like, oh, good, so he's gonna tell me what happened. I could just learn it from him, and then I take what you've said and regurgitate it on here. That's basically been my trick. I've sort of let you in on the secret now. There it is.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. That's all I want. Like, it's just one of the things. Is like people like when I give them the news. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it all, and. Yeah, it's do you know what I base my I tried to base my channel off I took inspiration from. There's a channel called Emergency Awesome. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No, I've never heard of Emergency Awesome.
He the guy that does it was like Game of Thrones.
He does like comic books and films and Marvel and stuff like that. I'm a huge fan of him. And I thought if I can do something like his channel, but 40k wise, and his is like what I do, but for just like you said, Marvel, Game of Thrones, like more of the TV shows and stuff like that. I thought that could be pretty cool. And yeah, it seems like it's working. People enjoying everything. So yeah,
that's wicked, man. It's really wicked. And I mean, obviously you said before about painting all these Black Templars and all these other sort of things that you're working your way through and dealing with it. I mean, obviously you've also been immortalized, albeit within, a custom sculpt, as it were, of Chapter Master Valrak itself. Do you feel like, are you on a campaign to make this character become the legit Imperial Fist Chapter Master? Is that the goal?
The thing is, I don't think I'd ever become the legit Imperial Fist chapter, even though that would be
they're absent one though, right? I mean, they don't have a model for a chapter master because Lysander didn't get it, did he?
Well, to be fair, every edition it seems like they get a new chapter master, so I don't really want to be the chapter master of the Imperial Fist. You'll just get killed off in the next edition. So what I decided to do like my own chapter called the Reclaimers of Dawn. And do you know what? When I got into like 40k and everything, I always hated the thought of people's own successor chapters, because every time I read a successor chapter someone made, they made them so broken and so overpowered. It's like, oh, my chapter did this, and they've got this and that, and I was like, oh, I just used to hate just reading about people's custom chapters. But then I started to read some other over time, and people to do it properly. And that inspired me to do mine, and that's what I'm doing mine now. I'm just trying to make it as real as possible, where it's not like we win this, we win that, and everything. So I thought maybe the way to get Chapter Master Valrak into the game, and also get a chapter that I'm making, is I make Valrak the Chapter Master of the Reclaimers of Dawn, and then if GW ever do it officially, then Valrak is canon.
I mean, they've been in the habit of doing it for their senior bods, right? Lately, they've obviously Stu Black's got his Death Eagles or whatever they're called in the mix. What are they called?
Like the Iron Ravens.
Iron Ravens. That's it. Yeah.
Is that his one?
Yeah, because they had a home world that's now
one someone made.
Sorry, mate. I would have cut you off there. Say that again.
Void Tridents, I think someone made as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool ones that have been made recently.
Yeah, there seems to be a big trend for kind of custom chapters, not just from Games Workshop, but for the community as a whole. Yeah. Lots of people, not just... I mean, there's people that are like doing their own, and then everyone else is doing their own version of that chapter. So they sort of spread virally, so to speak, that they get picked up on. I've seen lots of people do like custom supplements. So they're basically ripping apart like the PDFs of other... the codex and the supplements, and they're like photoshopping their own guides in there, changing the colors around, adding their own logos on, and just like printing them off so they can have their own. And it's like not for anyone really but themselves, but it's great to see.
I think the rules have added to it as well, like when you make your own successor chapters now, can't you, and like that. So I think that's added to it, and people have gone, I can make my own and make actual rules for them and everything.
Well, yeah,
So,
it's almost like
that's it.
100% better to have a
Yeah.
custom chapter just because you get the flexibility of not getting locked into a particular set of rules that you might not want to play all the time.
Yeah, I was going to offer that exact same opinion. I think the rules changes within 8th edition massively incentivize people to create their own chapters, because I felt it early doors, because I was a Crimson Fist player all the way through like 5th, 6th, 7th edition. It was all about Crimson Fist for me. And then 8th edition dropped and I was like, oh, so I'm rubbish. Great. And I don't know what it is about Space Marines, right? And again, I've had this ramble a few times, but if you paint a Space Marine red and you try and tell someone that ain't a Blood Angel, God, that's you know, that's visceral, that's spiritual, that's church to these people. Like,
I remember when I had a friend. He is still my friend.
well, that's good.
Well, he had a Blood Angel armor, and at the time, the Dawn of War game came out. So everyone who was coming into like the GW shops, like, oh, cool Blood Raven armor, and he was like, I swear to God, if I get someone else come up to me and say this again, that's it. So yeah, that was a fun time.
That's the thing, though, man. Like, it's something about Space. Again, I imagine it's because they're so integral to the lore, they're so integral to the game, and so integral to 40k that everyone knows what a blue Space Marine is.
It's because they're the poster boys, aren't they? Ultramarines are. Everyone knows Ultramarines because they're on all the box art, pretty much. They're on the cover,
yeah.
so it sort of makes sense.
But
It's superhumans, aren't they? It's like, oh, superhumans. They seem cool.
yeah.
That's what attracted me to them anyway. It's like, oh my God, these are guys are human. Well, I know they're not really humans. They're like so far gone from humanity, but they're like the humans in big armor and they can punch things. This is amazing.
They started out as humans, didn't they? They began. Well, maybe no. Even the Primaris guys start out as humans at some point, don't they?
Yeah. Well, everyone comes from the human, but they just get so gene enhanced and they're like their connection to humanity is kind of gone. There was a
really good moment in the Dante book. I don't know if you've read Dante. Have you read
Yes. Dante, Devastation of Baal. I'm waiting for Darkness in the Bud to come out on audio. Because I only do audiobooks because the kids, I can't sit down with a book. They jump all over me. So, yeah.
But there's that moment, isn't there, in Dante where he's part of like a recruiting force that goes back to Baal, and he returns and he actually sort of talks about the experience of going back home and wanting to be recognized, or hearing the legend of Dante, the angel who ascended, and actually the way he kind of talks about how that world is not his anymore. And it was a really beautiful way of like expressing that relationship where obviously Dante still holds a sort of, you know, a sense of belonging or a sense of place within the you know, the desert wastes of Baal, but at the same time accepts his fate and accepts his ascendance, I suppose. It was a really nice moment, I thought. It was just one of those weird things that no one really thinks about, but it was like, goddamn, that was really nicely put together. It was a good book.
I got read. Do you know what? That book was like one of the first 40k books. That upset me a bit. Where he used to he had the flashbacks to his dad and stuff, and I was like, oh my God, Dante, all these emotions,
all these emotions,
you know, all these emotions. I feel because I always saw Dante as just like, you know, the golden armored Sanguinius who was like complete badass. But then books came out. It really added to his character, and like because it starts following him as a child all the way through, like becoming a scout, you know, captain, to when he gets the, you know, title of like the Chapter Master, and then in the next book, Devastation of Valrak follows it, connects to it, and I was like, wow, this is what an amazing story. I love it.
There are some. I mean, again, we're definitely going to get into spoilers territory as we keep talking about it. But there were some definitely incredible moments with him as the old man that he had become in Devastation of Baal, where he's obviously like, you know, Astartes don't age, but if they did, Dante's doing it. It's that kind of thing where it's like, oh, it's getting a bit ropey. Like the idea that, you know, obviously he wears the face of Sanguinius, and, you know, obviously people only really ever see him wear the mask, so there's only a few people that have ever seen him without it, at least at this stage of his career, if you want to call it that. And Yeah, it's those moments of like, because that was a really great relationship in that book between him and his blood thrall before he went to battle.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, it was so. I think it begs a question as well. If Dante was to get upgraded to a Primaris Marine, would he go young again, or would he stay as an old man?
It was weird though, right? Because I had that question about Calgar. Why did he keep the cybernetic eye? Doesn't the passing the Rubicon refresh you entirely?
No, it just makes you bigger and stronger. It doesn't make you regrow limbs that you don't have. And likewise, I think you're still old.
Yeah,
you're just more hench, basically.
Bigger hench. Would it make him more younger in a sense of fighting terms? Because
you have
stuff
to
is
assume
new?
so.
Or would he be like, old exhausted Dante that you get from the character from those books? That'd be a strange one.
I think the thing is with Dante though as well is it's inevitable that he's going to go Primaris, right? It's his model. I mean, if you talk about the character himself being tired, the model, unfortunately. I mean, I've got a beautiful looking Dante model, but it was
good back in the day. Back in the day, it was it was the bee's knees. But now, if you compare it to the other stuff, it's the same with Azrael as well.
Oh man,
it's like what?
Well, it's one of those. Again, it's one of those weird ones, isn't it? Because like Azrael's a strange one because obviously Azrael's been replaced by a Primaris guy that looks exactly like him.
Yes,
but isn't.
That's what I thought. I was like, this is just Azrael.
Yeah,
just extra steps. That's all it is.
That's all it is. But that's the thing with like Dante. It's like obviously the potential for him as a miniature is, limitless. I mean, he's such a cool character. It's just, and this is where it sort of gets interesting to me, I suppose. Is like, because one thing actually, if we're talking lore, and it's cool to get into some lore talk. Do you not feel like Dante is the perfect kind of candidate for actually getting killed? Because this is one of the things that is irking me a bit about 40k. Especially even Devastation of Baal, right? And I feel like the story of Devastation of Baal is well known enough that this isn't going to feel super spoilery because it's in the codex, it's in the 8th edition rulebook. Like they are pretty much pushed to the brink in that. But it's that weird thing that at the end, all the special characters live. And it's like, Mephiston, Lamartez, Brother Corbulo, Dante, they're all just chilling and they're fine in the end. It's like, come on, guys.
The thing is, if they were to kill Dante crossing the Rubicon Primaris when he survived, what was it? I don't want to tell you he survived. It's a bit of a spoiler, but if he survived what he survived in that book and then died Rubicon, it'd be such a slap in the face. I think.
Well, he could have died at another point, not just crossing the Rubicon. I think Dan's point is. All characters survive. No one really ever dies. There's no consequences. And it's only stuff like, the Gathering Storm, they kind of kill off a few kind of minor characters. One of is it Colour Sergeant Kell?
The flag bearer.
Yeah, he gets killed off. And the main general of Cadia gets locked in a Tesseract, something or other. But beyond that, no one really ever dies.
I'm not campaigning for Dante to die. Dante is one of my 40k boys. I want him forevermore. But imagine the ripples you could send through that narrative if a character of his stature and standing died. Like that's the thing, isn't it? It's like
it would be good from a lore point. But I always view GW. Even though they make awesome models and some of the lore is amazing and them awesome books, I always view them as a business, and I try and see it through a business sense rather than like a lore or story point when they come to do new stuff. So yeah. I think if they were to do that, I think it would affect the sales. Like, they killed Dante. Who would become the next chapter master of the Blood Angels? Like to take his place if that was to happen? Who would have that cool factor? Of like the Golden Warrior who's supposed to stand in front of Abaddon and protect the Emperor in like the final days and stuff.
Maybe it's Dante and a Dreadnought. I'm still waiting for Chapter Master Dreadnought.
Do you know what? I was actually saying to my friends. Like I don't know if you've read the Vigilus lore or stuff. When like Calgar gets bashed over the head by Abaddon, I thought it would have been perfect for him to be bashed so much he got put into a Dreadnought.
Well, we became like a speculated that that came out because they were one of the
Everyone
teaser
speculated.
videos. One of the teaser videos basically had a Ultramarines flag, and it said "Only in death does duty end."
Yep.
And I was like, "Redemptor Dreadnought."
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean because I made
It didn't happen.
Yeah, I made the exact same speculation in the video saying I think Calgar's going to be in Dreadnought. And it's like, no, Primaris Calgar, yay!
I know. I was kind of disappointed because I think it would have been really cool.
That would have been amazing. That would have been really cool.
Carib Cullen has ascended to a Leviathan Dreadnought, mate. I mean, he was a chapter master.
Well, he is, yeah. So I guess there is precedent for doing it, but obviously that's Forge World, so they like to do these fun narrative things that you probably don't give a mainline GW doing.
Varric, mate.
Beyond as well, but he just gets switched off because everyone thinks he's boring nowadays, and they just put him back in status. Like, shut up, Beyond. Well, Beyond.
Pure old fell-handed Bjorn, yeah. Did you hear the story about the time me and the Emperor? Nah, shut up, mate. You. That was that cool comic book as well, wasn't it? Back in the day, that Black Templars comic book. Because there was a dreadnought in that, and I always felt like that was a really awesome exchange of like the weird, cranky nature of dreadnoughts when you wake them up. Like the idea that just like, oh god. What are you doing? Like, what have I got to do? I'll go murder people, mate. Come on.
There's an amazing audio drama called The Glorious Tomb, which is Black Templar Dreadnought being woken up and going to battle. It's only like half an hour long, but it's so cool, like the process of him waking up and like doing things. It's amazing.
Was he cranky?
He's a Black Templar, of course. So
they're all cranky.
Yeah, but he was like looking around, like how many years he's been out and stuff, and it's like a sword brethren guy who he knew before he went in. He's like a marshal now and stuff like that. Like he looks at him, he's like, oh, he's leading their own crusade now. It's like really cool, and like just like his perspective of being woken up and deploying stuff. It's amazing.
I do love that about the Templars, though, right? Because there's that moment in the Hell's Reach book where some Templars get helped out by some Imperial Fists at some point, I believe. And even then, is it Salamanders? Were there no Imperial Fists in it?
No. I recall there's no fist in that. It's Salamanders come to Hive Hell's Reach and help them out for a time being.
I seem to remember, I don't know, maybe it was Salamanders then, because I seem to remember there was a bit where basically they were with some allies, maybe it was the Salamanders. It's been a long while since I've read that book, but they were with some Salamanders, I guess, and then the Salamanders were sitting back shooting over the wall or whatever, and then the Black Templars like going, what are you doing, boys? Come on! Forwards, we'll show you how it's done. And it's that whole sort of like contempt they have for everyone.
I think the scene is, I think you're on about, it's like they're defending like a civilian bunker, and the Black Temp's like, we can kill one of the war bosses now and like stop this entire attack, and they're like, it's not worth it because the civilians could be thinking, and they're like, you're all idiots, kind of thing.
Yeah, man. I just love it.
Grimaldis turns around and says, get out of my city, because Grimaldis is like a badass. Yeah, I love it.
The Templars have been woven into actually some of the coolest narratives in 40k literature, though, because there's that moment in Talon of Horus where Abaddon and his cohorts leave the Eye of Terror, and Sigismund. He's just chilling out waiting for him. He's like, I knew you were going to come here eventually, and now I'm going to mess you up. And it's like, oh man, what a dude.
his death line is the greatest line that I've ever I listened to. I was like, oh my god, it is like, that's how you go out, Sigismund. Respect.
There you go.
I loved it.
Is that going to go on your own personal gravestone, hopefully many years from now?
The actual quote is, you'll die as your weakling father died, soulless, honourless, weeping, ashamed. It's like, oh my god, this is amazing. Good boy, Sigismund.
Exactly.
So good.
What a legend, man. So, I suppose if we change tacks just a little bit, because obviously it's cool to chat some lore and some bits and pieces with you. But if we bring it back to gaming, man. So I mean, you've been, so you know, you put yourself out there. You did the Hellstorm stuff. You put yourself up against the Iron Hands, not the Iron Hands, sorry, the Iron Warriors.
Iron Warriors, yep, had to be done.
The Iron Warriors. So you know, and you represented yourself well, and you got your win in the bank. You know, I've heard you talking about your undefeated streak and all the rest of it, but it seems like lots of people are People are stepping to you now, man. They're throwing a lot of shade your way. So
It is.
how are you feeling about that?
I feel great. I think it's one of the funniest things I've ever done in a while. Like, people get so mad. I'm like, yeah, I'm undefeated. And they go, you've already played one game. I go, well, statistically, I'm undefeated. So you can't say anything against it. So what are you going to say? I am undefeated. No, I don't care. And now, like, everyone's calling everyone out. Like, Midwinter Minutes called Henry Carville out. And I was like, do you know what? Screw this. I'm going to go one better. I'm going to challenge Luton. Because me and Luton always banter on Twitter with each other because he's an Ultramarine player. And I'm an Imperial Fist. And I'm like, oh, he's reading a book again. And then he's like, oh, yeah, you're hiding behind a wall kind of thing. So I was like, right, I'll call him out. And then, so I said, right, I'll call him out for bragging rights. And then Winters made the video. I think it was the same day, actually, if I'm not mistaken. And I was like, right, I'll call Winters out as well. Let's do it, Winters. I'll fight you. And he's just got on from there now. And, like, everyone's calling each other out now on the internet. I think it's absolutely hilarious. I love it. It's great.
I think it's a great evolution though of the format, right? And I think again, it's that kind of actually like playing for something, like playing for reputation, playing for, and obviously it's all for all the fun of the game, but actually there is a real beauty to having people getting a bit leery with each other about playing some 40k against each other, putting some stakes on it, because all too often with back reps, it's just, if you watch Winters, and I love Winters stuff, it's Winters versus random dude, and there's no real sort of build to it, whereas actually, you put a little bit of that UFC, MMA, WWE flair onto it, get a little bit of smack talk going, you can create some really incredible events around that, man. You can
it builds the hype up, doesn't it? Like, I'm going to speak to Winters tomorrow, and we've got a phone call scheduled because we are planning to do something. I think we're going to do it after October, so when the new Space Marine Codex comes out and everything like that. And what we are planning to do, if Element allows it, is of course get a people in there to watch us play each other.
Amazing!
Like we were thinking of like doing like intro music, like you said, WWE and stuff like that, like walking down to the ring. I was like looking at like personally embroidered boxing.
Over like a robe,
stuff like that. Yeah, robes and stuff like that today. I'm just going to go to the ring with this on and stuff.
Well, surely you need to, because you did a great video on Twitter, I think, which was based on Rick and Morty, but you'd swapped out all the heads with the different chapters.
Oh yeah, like that X got to give it to you thing.
Yeah, so you've got to have that music playing when you come in.
Yeah,
I don't know, man.
I was thinking of doing that one that you linked me the other day.
What, the little prayer?
No, not the wrestler.
Greedo.
Yeah.
Greedo, yeah.
I've been playing that on repeat just constantly. I love it. It's such a good mix of music.
Oh, it's incredible, man. Well, he mixed the Goldberg entrance. So Goldberg has this like famous entrance where he like leaves the dressing room and there's like security guards around him and they shoot it that way and then he emerges. But then Goldberg's music's all war-torn, kind of like sort of that kind of thing. But then obviously when Greedo comes out there, it hits you with the Madonna just like a prayer, and it's like
amazing. Yeah, it's
so good.
So cheeky as well. Yeah, I love it. So yeah, we're planning to do it at like Element Games, and then like get tickets to like watch it. Then all the money from like the tickets will go to a charity, like a mental health charity, or some other. We haven't decided on the charity yet, but a charity, something like that. So
it's surely the winner
good cause,
fees, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, but we'll probably just decide at the day, and what it is. I'll probably before that. I'll just pick maybe a number of charities, and we get split it across and everything like that. But I think it's a good cause. People get to be there. It's a laugh. I think that's the best thing about it. It's just a laugh. No matter who wins, who loses, we're there just to enjoy ourselves, have a bit of fun.
You could introduce introduce a pay-per-view model for those that can't, be there in person. Build that.
Apparently it was. We're talking about maybe streaming it on Twitch or whatever. Platforms. I don't know what they do at Element Games. I'm not too sure. And money raised from that will go to charity as well and everything.
That's incredible.
Maybe this could like start something off. Like I was saying to him, we could probably do something like where we do like a content creator event, like where it's all as many content creators as you can in one room, and then we're all battling each other and stuff.
Could you imagine
invite people around? It'd be just hilarious and stuff.
Could you imagine all of the selfie cams going off at the same time, though, man? It would like create like this paradox, surely. Like you just, a hole in time with all the different people pointing cameras at themselves, going, playing Valrak, man, and then just Jesus.
Yeah, that's very much like what No Retreat Early Doors was, because the first 1 or 2 was pretty much all the YouTubers that were out there, so Winters and Tabletop Tactics and people like that.
I have to say, man, on the topic of playing against influencers, I didn't know before 2017 or 2016. No, it was 2017. I didn't know who Lawrence was, so I'd never watched Tabletop Tactics, and I had no idea who Lawrence was. And I pulled him in a tournament at Warhammer Fest in 2017. And obviously he rocks up, he's wearing the shirt and stuff, and you go, okay, I get it, you're some kind of YouTube person, I don't know. And it is that ridiculous thing, though, where literally, like, you're trying to play a game, and all these kids just keep coming up to him, and you're like, what is going on? Like, they loved him, and I was like, this is the most awkward way to play a game I've ever had. Because the thing was, as well, was, like, it was difficult to argue a rule with him, because he's a great player, so you gotta... and I was like, try hard, trying to win, and he was doing stuff, and I was like, no, I don't think that's how that works, or like, we were having just a fair debate, I'm not saying he diddled me or doing anything ridiculous, he played it down the line and was a great guy to play against, but it definitely added a weird element to the game when you're trying to play and all these kids just keep coming up to him, like, getting photos and things, you're like, Jesus, just hang on a minute, let's just get this done, but yeah, so as long... Sorry,
I've had that event where people come up and go, kind of a photo with you, and it's the most weirdest thing in the world because I'm like, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm not going to say no, get away from it.
Of course.
I'm not one of them kind of people, but it's like, why do you want a photo with me? It's like, what do I do that's special? It's like, okay, yeah, cool, but it's like, okay, it's mind blowing, like, because again, YouTube is not something I do for like a job. It's not at all. It's not my job. I do it as a hobby. So
and yet you're more successful than some people who are trying to do it for a job, right? I mean, how does that make them feel?
I know. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Rubbing the salt in there.
Yeah, it's just one of the things. Like, okay, it's a bit weird, but it's nice and it's weird at the same time.
Of course, man.
I can understand it. Yeah.
Has it ever crossed the streams? Have you ever ended up with your real life work being impacted by your, hobby? No,
I'm lucky because I own my own business.
Oh, fair enough.
I'm my own boss at the end of the day, so it's not like, oh, you need to go home and stream this. It's like, well, I'll just do it when I want to do it because who's going to tell me not to? Because I'm my own boss, kind of thing. So yeah, it doesn't really affect me. I think that's why I have so much time to do what I do with it, because if I had a job, I probably wouldn't have as much time to like invest into the channel, but because I have a lot of spare time because of the work I do, it's like, okay, I'll just make some 40k videos and just talk about crap today. That's it.
I mean,
that's it.
You mentioned Winters as well. Obviously, you're playing against him. Phil here has played Winters. I mean, Phil, have you got any top tips for facing off against the great Winters?
Ooh. Bit of a tough one. Well, we did a Maelstrom game, so obviously I can't really give you much tactical advice because you can't do Maelstrom no more. I know. Bring. What's the biscuits he really likes?
Oh, what is chocolate chip hobnobs?
Yeah, chocolate chip hobnobs. I think that's his favourite. So maybe bring some of them if you can, or just be willing to like have tea with them.
And lace it with laxative.
Which I like.
Defaults it? Yeah, okay, I've got this.
He's
because both me and Joe have played him in the past. I think Joe's played him twice, hasn't he? Now
you're not supposed to talk about Joe anymore. He's dead to us.
Oh yes,
Joe's on about. I'm the new Joe.
Exactly. Valrak's taking over.
Chapter Master Joe.
Yeah.
Chapter Master Joe. He wishes. Oh man.
Yeah, he seems really nice, Winters, as well. Like, I don't know if you watched his video he put out a couple of days ago about like his mental health and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I never knew he was going through all that kind of stuff. And I said props to him for like speaking about it because a lot of people don't speak about that kind of stuff.
No, totally.
And I said, if you ever want to talk, just just give me a message, and that's where it came from. Really, that's when we started talking a bit and everything like that. And I think we're slowly becoming friends.
That's cool,
BFFs and stuff like that, which is nice.
Yeah,
it's nice to connect with people. Like, I think if I could take anything from YouTube, like what I've got from YouTube, it wouldn't be like the videos and the views. I'm not really bothered about views. I'll take that now. I don't care if I get 100 or 1,000 views. It's just nothing. It's the people I've met through it that is the best thing. Like, I've met so many awesome people, so many friends, and when this YouTube stuff finishes, they'll carry on being friends. So, it's one of the things what I absolutely love. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, again, obviously not on your same level, but like, again, echoing that sort of sentiment, really. I mean, there's so many cool people who like listen to our show, who like reach out to us and just sort of want to chat to us. And
yeah,
and again, I'm really unassuming with it. Like, I'm just like, cool, yeah, let's chat about it. I have already, doing this podcast for a couple of years, I've made friends from this podcast who are just people who listen, and then they just ping me a message, or ping Phil a message, or ping Joe a message. I mean, obviously that we shouldn't talk about, but it's that thing, right, where like,
yeah,
it's weird, right? Because it's that thing where you're like, because I think a lot of people don't expect you to be cool about it. Like, most people, they build up a lot of concern and a lot of whatever. And I'm not suggesting that people are always going to be 100% available 100% of the time, but most people really respect and appreciate their audience, and really appreciate people who like what they do. And I think that's the thing. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily encourage hundreds of thousands of people to reach out to people all the time, because ultimately there is limits to people's opportunities. But at the same time, right, I mean, nothing's greater than getting that feedback from people and hearing about how you've had an impact on them. And I mean, Winters came on our show, a year and a half ago, a year ago. And
yeah, it was about that, I think.
Yeah, and as you said, Valrak, you just couldn't have guessed that a man that happy would have been struggling with what he's been through. And, I mean, huge respect to him for saying what he said, and putting himself out there and taking the risk and believing in this community. Because I think that was the most incredible thing about it, is he clearly cares and loves this community so much.
Yeah.
That he was willing to risk it all and put faith in the community. And I think, yeah, I mean, when I saw that video, I mean, I can't pretend it was easy to watch, especially when...
Oh, yeah.
Especially when you feel like you have some form of relationship with the guy. I mean, obviously, I'm not talking to him like you're talking to him these days, but he's been on my show. He's helped out with this, and Phil's played him, Joe's played him. He's a fantastic bloke, and it's that thing, man, where it's like, I'm just really happy that he was able to put himself out there and and be heard, and I think it's awesome, man. I think again, and obviously, I think what you two are doing as well with the pitch that you kind of put across there, I mean, obviously, watch your space in terms of what's coming around the corner, because obviously there's always variables and who knows what might change in the future. But, the fact that you guys are doing that off the back of that video and off the back of, this sort of platform that you've created, it's awesome, man. It's awesome to bring awareness to it, because, I think we've all had our struggles at different times with different situations, and I wouldn't want to compare anything I've been through to anything anyone else has been through, because I don't think that's really, really fair. But I think it's incredible when people use what they've created and use it to make the world better. And I think that's something that Winters is inadvertently done with what he's put out there, and I think the response to it really shows that. So yeah, no, massive respect to the bloke. It's just I can only say how much respect and awe I have for him and what he risked, because it can't have been easy for him. But
yeah, definitely, it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do. So yeah, hats off.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. But you're gonna smash him, right? That's the core of it.
I'm gonna make him into dust.
Exactly.
It's over, Winners. Your YouTube career is over after I finish it. It's done and dusted.
You pay it.
Is it winner takes all in terms of you give the winners, you give the losers channel? So he's got to give
that's what
subs to you.
Yeah, that's what it's turned into.
That's
what's on the line,
basically.
It's people's livelihood and stuff like that.
That's the way forwards, man. So you're not going down to his place to play him. He's gonna potentially an element.
we're not sure yet. It all depends on what's happening at Element, because we want to do it as more of an event. But if that can't happen, because of course Nurgle's plague in the world, then I'll just drive down to his. He's in the south somewhere, isn't there?
He's in the south. I don't know how public he is about where he is exactly, but he's around the Swindon area. I mean, it's in his title.
I think it's 2 or 3 hours away from me if I checked it last time.
Oh yeah, because it's relatively straightforward for you. You just go straight down the.
Just go straight south, down the M1.
Down the M1, then down the. Well, it's more M5 across kind of deal. But
it's more near Wales side in the.
Yeah. But not too far from me though, mate. You know, I mean, just saying, you can. I'm not suggesting we would put your undefeated record on the line on that one. We can just have we'll just have a friendly warm up game, as it were.
It's alright, it won't come close anyway.
No
problem. Stuck in my undefeated.
That's it, man. That's it.
I think this is the thing, right? Like, I play tabletop, but I'm not a competitive table. Like, I know Winters will spank me because he plays it. That's what he does. That's his thing. He doesn't. He just plays tabletop. Like for me, I play, now and then. But I don't care. It's just all for the banter. It's all for the fun, and that's what it's all about. I mean,
do you feel like with 9th edition, now that you're kind of getting into the spirit of all this stuff, you might, obviously after Nurgle's rot and all the rest of it goes away, that you might get more into that side of things, or do you just feel like it's, it's not necessarily your part of the hobby, or it is, but not the major pull, as it were?
I like it. Like we were speaking before the stream about tournaments and stuff. Like I played a couple of 2vs2 tournaments in 8th edition. I would definitely do more of them in 9th edition. If that ever comes around to again, it all depends on the situation. When it comes to single tournaments, I'm not too sure. I may be speaking out of line because I've never played one, but I think they're more of a serious event. And with me, I like to joke around a lot. So I don't know if you watched the Hellstar Wargaming one.
Of course, man. Yeah.
It just basically was just laughing for like 4 hours as we were filming that. I'm not too sure I get on people's nerves as I'm trying to crack jokes with them and stuff like that at these single events because I don't know. I've heard stories of certain types of. I'm not painting everyone with the same brush for this, but there's certain players that are just in it to win it, and they just don't care about talking or having laughs or anything like that. And that's what I'm about, and I don't want to, get someone riled up with the way I am when I'm at tournaments because that's all I do. I just make jokes all the way through it and stuff like that.
I mean, if I can do my best to try and dispel that, I think as someone who's played in a lot of singles tournaments, you do encounter all sorts of people, right? I mean, everything's a spectrum. No one's. I
think that's life, though, isn't it? Really, you keep counting it. I know what you mean.
I mean, I've gone to doubles tournaments where I've sat down across the table from someone and they've opened their mouths and I've gone, oh God, it's like you're one of these, are you? Oh Jesus! And then it's like, okay, fine.
I think I can't remember if it was with you or with the man who shall now not be named.
Yeah.
But we've come up against some opponents and they literally go off to whisper in a corner to discuss tactics, and we're just like openly going, "I'm going to shoot that next turn." Right? Yeah, you're going to shoot that one. Yeah, cool. Right, awesome. And it's like, don't care if they hit. It's like, don't take it too seriously.
Oh yeah, like I've had that at doubles before. I've had that with people. Like when I went, I forgot what it was now. I think it was the Chapter Master Orbital Bombardment, and you have to do it before the morale phase. And I was like, is there anything to do now? And I was like, oh, as soon as you said, right, it's the morale phase, I was like, oh wait, I forgot to do my bombardment. And they're like, well, you can't do it now because it's morale phase. I was like,
oh, get out.
This what kind of game it's going to be. But the thing that I enjoyed about that is that I had my partner there next to me and we just looked at each other and just started laughing. So it's one of them things like I've got someone who shares my banter and laughs with me. Yeah. And in a single tournament, I wouldn't have that. I'd just be there going, okay.
Well, you have that in the lunch break or between games with your mates. But during the actual game, you don't have anyone to sort of share that with.
I mean, it's fair to say mine and Phil's favourite game of 40k ever, and I don't feel bad asserting what Phil's favourite game of 40k ever was when Phil and he who shan't be named were doubling up, and then they came up against me and my mate Mike, who were doubling up, and we played at a Warhammer World 40k doubles tournament, and this was in like 2016 time and all the rest of it. So it was 7th edition time, and we were just going off at each other. Like, people were looking at us like, what is happening at that table? Because we were just, we were not nice to each other at all, but not in a bad way, but in a very sort of like pally way. And we were just screaming at each other, doing all this crazy stuff. And, you're seeing people's heads turning in the room, like, what is happening on that table? And it's like, and which is, I don't know, it was like the right level of beer, the right level of, juvenile, behavior. It was just perfect.
Yeah.
Man. And that was at a doubles. And I've had more good experiences at doubles than I've had negative ones. But then I've had more good experiences at tournaments in general than negative. I think you get what you bring, ultimately. If you want to be that guy that wants to stand across and be super serious about it, then you're going to receive that back. But then equally, if you come to it with your attitude, man, and you're just talking up a storm and you're having a laugh with it, you'll break them down. No one can keep
People
it.
are receptive to that.
Yeah.
I think that another thing as well is that I'm only really familiar with Space Marines. So if I'm playing against someone like who's an Eldar player and they say, okay, this does this, I'm like, okay, then. But I don't know why, but it'd be in my mind, does it do that or does it not do that? And I don't want to be like, can you show me that in the book, like every single second? Because I'm not that kind of person at all.
Yeah.
So it's just like, at least when I've got someone next to me, maybe they know a little bit more than me. Because like I said, I'm not. I love tabletop, but I'm not super into it. I know all the rules and everything like that. It's I just know stuff that belongs to me on my list and stuff.
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting elements of it, though, right? Because it's the social contract part of the whole thing that gets quite bizarre, because you want to expect the best of the people you're across the table from, and you don't want to... So you do take a leap of faith, and then sometimes you come away and you talk about it after the fact, and then you realise that they got such and such thing wrong, but they're having similar conversations about you when they go, oh, we got that thing wrong. Because people make mistakes, right? But it is... It's tough, right? Because, I mean, then the funny thing is, you gave Elder as an example. The sad truth is if it sounds too good to be true, they definitely have it. That's the problem with the Elder. it's like
what is all this?
Yeah, exactly. You're like, what? Exactly. It's like, surely you should have got 2 off of the back of that. And it's about, whatever. It's just, they're crazy, man. But look, dude, I don't necessarily want to call it a day, but I worry about the fact that, ultimately, busy man, we've appreciated having you on the show. I mean,
no worries.
I feel like this could be a perfectly good time to start winding down and wrapping up. But I mean, is there anything particular that you're interested in kind of plugging at the moment or talking about? Anything you're working on that you sort of feel like we haven't touched on yet, mate?
Working on nothing. My videos are just random. I tell you what I am working on a bit by bit is that I'm having a little animation done on my channel. Nothing massive, but there's I don't know if anyone's read Saturnine, the Horus Heresy book.
I certainly haven't.
From
Phil?
Siege. And I won't go into it, but there's a scene with Sigismund in there, and I'm having that animated, and that should be on the channel very, very soon.
It's exciting, man. Exciting stuff.
Look out for that. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, genuinely, mate, massively appreciate getting you on and having a quick chat with you about different bits and pieces.
No worries.
Yeah. Good luck with all the future upcoming stuff. Hopefully you do come down to the south and we can throw some dice. You can come hang out in my weird, creepy sex dungeon.
Nice. I look forward to it. Do you have to wear pants?
Bring a friend and we'll do doubles.
Oh, is that how it's going to roll, Phil? You're going to get in on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
I'll actually try and do that if we can. Maybe I can bring my friend down who plays the knights and stuff. And
mate, that would be awesome.
Bring his Space Marines down and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got like a gaming setup in my garage, but it's been kind of lovingly referred to as a weird, creepy sex dungeon. Because when I first sorted it all out, I still had loads of like tools in there. So like there were like saws and things hanging off the walls. So it was a bit of a weird vibe to try and play around. So
that's something I really want to do. Like in the future, is like I want to like clear like in my house at the moment. Like I'm in my attic at the moment. Like it's my little place. Kids come up and stuff and everything like that. But I just want to like have somewhere where I can like put a table in and just film stuff. Like not to like I'm not I don't want to be like the new tabletop tactics or anything like. I just want to film and just have a laugh with people. Maybe even stream it and stuff like that, and just have a fun time as we just play 40k and people can join in and stuff.
That's the thing, though, man. I mean, live streaming's always a really cool thing if you can get it set up. I mean, it just demands the space. I mean, I set up that room with the aspiration of doing live streaming, but I'm in that weird position at the moment where I'm selling up and moving at the moment. So I'm kind of in that ridiculous spot where it's like I want to turn it into something awesome, but I feel like more people will want a garage than will want a gaming room, right? So. That's my problem at the moment. I can't quite achieve the dream just yet.
No, nice.
But the next one,
hopefully one day.
The next one, mate. When I'm looking around, I'm like, right, has it got a random room that the missus can't, stake a claim on that I could just?
That's what I always end up doing. I'm always on like right move, even though I love my house I'm in now. Going right, if I buy this one, I can turn this one in. I'm like, why am I doing this? Why? I don't need to do this.
But that's what Lawrence has done, man. He's moved down sort of Bristol way just to basically create tabletop tactics manor, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, because I was speaking to a chap called Pardo. He runs SM Battle. I don't know if you know about SM Battle Report.
Yeah, we know him. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was telling me because he just opened a place in Gibraltar, a new gaming hall, Pardo, and I'm talking to him to go down because my family used to live in Gibraltar, back in the day.
Yeah, nice.
So I know Gibraltar. And
did they not get you into No Retreat, man?
Well, this is the thing. There was supposed to be there's a tournament in November, I think. But the thing is, in November, I don't think I can attend it because, of course, the kids are going back to school and everything like that.
Yeah.
I can't take them off school because they've missed so much school. That's been going on, of course, with everything that's happened. So. Yeah. I don't really want to take that time off, but I said maybe if you do it in the holiday sometime, then definitely I can come down and we can play. But we are definitely planning to have a match at some point, like a little lore match. He's going to be teaming up with my Last Wall with his Crimson Fists. I was going to say, because he's in the studio and stuff.
Yeah, because he's all about them Crimson Fists, man. I mean,
they're amazing. They're amazing, that fist.
Well, yeah, because you both had the same kind of characters designed, because the sculptor's done your model, hasn't he?
Yeah, well, that's where I got it from. I was like, who made these for you? They're amazing. And he's like, oh, Baz Watkins. I was like, all right, I'll check him out. And I messaged him and said, hey, Baz, have you got any commission spots open? He said, I can fit you in depending on what it is. I was like, I just want a guy with a line helmet. And he's like, okay, I'll see what I can do. And then he came out to me with the model he made me. I was like, oh my God, this is legit the best thing I've ever seen in my life. I love it.
It's absolutely incredible, man. And that's the thing with those SN guys. Like, I've got a huge amount of respect for what they've done out there because, like, No Retreat, as Phil will tell you, is such an awesome event. I've not been privileged enough to go, but I've heard lots of really great stuff. And, they got into the bat rep business about a year ago, didn't they?
Yeah.
Well, they've always done like written ones, didn't there? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, he did used to do written ones, yeah.
Yeah, but the old school White Dwarf sort of style. And then video ones in the last year.
Yeah. It's nice though, I love it. I think this is the cool thing now about 40k. There's so many awesome channels that are popping up. And I think it's great for the hobby and like the IP as a whole, because you get all these awesome lore channels, these bat rep channels, and just everything else, like channels like mine who just like cover like random news and weird stuff. So it's awesome. It's awesome. It's growing bit by bit.
We're fueling their success, mate. That's it, you see. We're making all that money.
Yep. Should make me a partner.
Wow, exactly, man. You can buy shares. I think they're only going for like, I think they're like 90 quid a share at the moment. Games
I was seeing it the other day. They actually dropped a bit.
Yeah, I think they've had a little bit of a moment. It's funny actually. I was talking to a mate of mine about that like 3 odd years ago. He was asking me because I was like, because it's funny actually. Now that I'm in my 30s, I've stopped caring about being a 40k fanboy. It's like one of those weird things. Like when I was in my 20s, I was terrified of anyone finding out that I liked 40k because it seemed like a weird stigma. Whereas now, I just wear it on my sleeve, man. Like anyone asks, like, "Oh, what are you doing this weekend?" It's like, well, you might laugh, but I'm going to go spend a weekend in Nottingham, surrounded by men, sweaty and throwing dice at each other. It's going to be a great time. But it's that thing, man, where like genuinely, like you encounter people and you talk to people about it now. And I was having this conversation with him, and I was telling him about how cool GW is and what it's becoming and where it's going, and I told him like, yeah, it seems like they're on the up, and he bought some shares in it, and then he told me the other day how successful they've been for him, and I was like, Damn it! It's like, should have taken some of my own advice. But you never really think about it, right? Like, money is such a weird concept in as much as, like, shares and stuff. It's just like, what? It's like elaborate gambling, right? It's like...
That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's just fake. It's like, oh, here's money. Now give me more money back.
Yeah.
There we go.
Exactly.
Fake money. Internet money is... But it's real money in a way, but it's not. It's like, what?
Well, you know, GW's feeling it, man. If it's real to anyone, it's real to them. And God bless them for it, mate. I mean, I'm so grateful for where we're at with it, because it's so awesome to be in a place where it's just what it is. And you know, I think coming back around to, like, you know, your contribution to that and what you're doing in your space, I think again it's content creators like yourself that are really setting a great tone for it. And I'm excited, man. I'm excited for the future of it. I think it's the only way is up with this hobby, and you know, we're seeing more and more awesome stuff all the time. And you know, you hear all the rumors and the things about, you know, motion pictures and video games and everything that's possible. So, yeah, man, very exciting times.
Here's one.
There you go. So there we are. Cool, man. Well, look, thank you so much, Phil. Do you have any final thoughts, buddy, or should we just get on with it?
No, let's just get on with it.
All right, mate. We're going to move on now to whatever it is that comes next. Now, Valrak, because you're such a super fan of the show, you understand that when I transition to another segment of the show, I do so with a transitional noise. Now, it's not a noise that's pre-recorded or fabricated or created that I edit in. Obviously, it's all raw Dan. But, you know, seeing as you're a special guest, would you like to offer us some kind of random assortment of noise to transition us to the next segment?
I got my bell on my desk. Hang on, yeah.
Oh, you got a bell. You got physical instruments. See, mine's much more. Here we go.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
How many do you want? Do you just want me to just keep...
Just about 3 seconds of noise that I can fade.
Okay. Ready?
Mate, someone is going to complain that you blew out their speakers with that, but there it is.
I don't know why I have this on my desk.
Howdy, one and all. In what has, in some ways, become something of a regular feature for us here on the Lookout Sir 40k podcast, we're going to be conversing about Phil's gaming adventures at the... What's it called again now, Phil? I've just forgotten the name of the event.
It's No Retreat, number 9.
No Retreat, number 9. A little private group of gamers who get together on the lands of Gibraltar, right, Phil?
It is on the Rock.
On the Rock. So they gather there. Is it an island, Gibraltar? I can't remember.
It is, but there's a tiny, I guess, causeway or bridge now linking it to Spain. So
marvellous.
It's quite easy to get to.
Wonderful times. Well, nonetheless, you're going to Gibraltar to play in a tournament, or at least we hope you are. I mean, ultimately, obviously, there are a number of variables still at play, especially where Spain's involved. Obviously, those guys are having a good time clocking up the numbers at the moment. And obviously, if any of you are listening to us from Spain, obviously, best of luck with that. Hope it goes well. Stay safe and so on and so forth. But Phil, despite all of that, you're going to spit in the face of convention after all that, nonsense you've been saying about others and their, attitude towards going out and playing in gaming events. You're going to, fly all the way over to Gibraltar and play Small Toy Soldiers, you hypocrite.
Well, exactly. So I won't go to a local tournament event, but I will happily get on a plane, fly for about 2 hours, hour and a half, to go to Gibraltar. But apparently Gibraltar's a lot safer than here, so actually it makes more sense, if anything.
Well, fair enough, mate. Fair enough. You'll hear no judgment from me, Phil. I'm simply stating the facts and letting the listeners make their own decisions in that regards. But
well, exactly. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that I kind of qualified to this event back in December last year, it's kind of been a bit of a build-up. If it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't go.
It's true. The overwhelming sense of obligation has driven you there.
No, and it's an excuse to hang out with Toke, my best buddy. So, got to factor that into consideration as well.
You just cut me deep, Phil. Not only have I got to put up with Joe no longer wanting to appear on this show, I got you telling me that you're not that I'm not your best buddy anymore. This is a lot to take on board.
I'm sorry. I mean, maybe we get Toke on to be Joe's replacement.
I'm sort of sick of talking about the Joe replacement thing. It's one of those things where I've sort of accepted the fact that he's just kind of given up on us now, and I'm just going to sort of let that be what it is, I suppose. I mean, obviously, to those out there who enjoyed Joe's contribution to the show on a regular basis, I feel like that ship has sailed now. Really, it seems like he's all in other areas, so we're just gonna move on without him. Really, I probably should say something about this in the intro section, but here we are doing it now because we're just kind of coming to terms with it as we do this. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure he'll turn up again, maybe. We'll wait and see. But there you go. Let us know what you think about the absence of Joe yet again, and whether or not we should forgive and allow him to reappear, or whether we should shun him forever and cast him aside like he apparently has done to us.
Well, he's just busy working overtime, isn't he? That's really all it is.
We're all busy, Phil. I have a real job, not just this. He's no excuse. Anyway, let's not air our dirty laundry as it concerns that. It's all a joke, everybody. Ha ha ha. Move on. Anyway, right, let's talk about No Retreat, and more specifically, for all of us of the podcast fandom that love listening to Phil talk about Krieg. Yes, everybody, this is going to be another segment where Phil talks about Krieg, but in an interesting twist. It is a list critique type segment. So essentially, Phil is going to tell me about his Krieg army, his aspirations, his thoughts, his plans, his theories around what he's taking, why he's taking it, and then I'm going to critique it as he explains it to me and potentially point out some flaws in his thinking, aspects of his plans that seem, absent of any actual tactical depth. And then he's going to tell me...
I'm sure there'll be a lot of that.
Indeed. And then he's going to tell me at the end of it that none of that matters because he can't paint anything else and he's got to use it anyway. Spoilers. Does that sound about right, Phil?
90% right. I mean, there is not that. I mean, I've got a large enough collection that I can just swap things out. It's not. I'm not just taking the only models I own, for example.
True.
But I can't paint up anything new because I'm in the middle of doing that already, basically. But I think there's, as of the time of recording, there's still about 7 days before we have to submit the lists, so it's not too late to change my mind on anything. But I'm reasonably happy with what I've got.
All right, I understand. So, for those of you unfamiliar with the format of No Retreat, so although it is a tournament, it isn't really a try-hard tournament, for want of a better way of describing the situation. It is essentially more of a friendly, fun, Illuminati-style event where you are gifted an invitation to pay to travel to Gibraltar and take part in this tournament. And it's usually based on an objective opinion of whether your army is painted good by a group of individuals who we widely understand get all of their armies painted by commission, offering them the absolute authority to be able to judge other people's work. Does that sound about right, Phil?
Well, they, like any other bat rep channel, get their stuff painted by other people, which makes sense. But yeah, their main thing is, the SN guys, they've got beautiful terrain. That's sort of, and they're great guys, and they put on a good show. They know how to put on an event, basically.
Fantastic.
The spread of the buffet is there for the taking. So,
like some kind of crazy orgy. It's always got a beautiful buffet going.
Yes, if you say so. Yes.
I don't know for sure. I'm just referencing Always Sunny in Philadelphia. There's always, whenever they go to orgies, there's always a very good buffet on.
Well, it's probably there because it's true.
Possibly. I imagine that's a very kind of astute observation made by the writers of the show, and nothing that neither me or Phil could verify in any meaningful way. Plus, also, it is worth highlighting that I really enjoy making funny little remarks about No Retreat, because obviously I'm bitter that they won't accept me into their private club. So I like just making Phil uncomfortable by saying something that is ultimately reasonable in itself, but making it sound like it's totally unacceptable. Do you appreciate that, Phil?
Yeah, it's always great, isn't it? Yeah.
I always love when you put me on the spot, Dan, while we're recording and say stuff which puts me in a difficult position. Thanks for that.
Yes, when I'm about to go and hang out with them for 4 days, in a
look,
few weeks' time.
I've had the privilege of being around various members of SN Battle Report / No Retreat organisational fun, and found them all to be rather lovely human beings. It's definitely something that seems to foster a good, sensible, enjoyable gaming atmosphere, I suppose. So they've got to be doing something right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they know how. Like I said, they know how to put on a good time.
No, absolutely, man. And as I say, ever so slightly envious that they never want to accept my application. I'm not good enough for them, so ultimately, here we are. But
there's always next year.
Unlikely, mate. Unless I, like them, pay people large amounts of money to paint my army for me. I don't think that's going to happen. But unless anyone listening to this show is a high-caliber commission painter who likes the idea of working for cheap to enable me to be able to apply for No Retreat, reach out to us in the DMs and or comment section and let me know if you can do me a good deal. And there you go. Payment upon admission to No Retreat. That's my criteria.
I mean, they also do, for the more tournament-y player, they also do a GT normally in the sort of springtime.
Are you on a timeshare, Phil? Is this what I'm getting from you now? You're trying to...
No, I'm just saying that, if your painting's not up to scratch, but you like to beat people down in games, which I know you do, then the GT version of, it's not No Retreat, but the SN GT is more your flavour, so to speak.
There you go. Will you go to that with me, Phil, or is that one considered beneath you and unnecessary for travelling purposes?
Well, do you know what? It's normally I'd probably be like, I wouldn't bother with it. But given the choice, and if it's potentially the only way you'll go to one of their events, then yeah, I'd probably try and go along to it. I think you just got to be quick on buying the tickets, really. God, what a privileged position they're in.
Anyway, right, so we're going to talk about Phil's Krieg army list and, assess its No Retreat viability. In terms of the way No Retreat operates, they used to have very strict restrictions about how you crafted your army when we were in the wondrous world of 8th edition. But we're not in 8th edition anymore. We're in 9th edition, and ultimately, army list building is a whole different thing. So, Phil, why don't you start by explaining to us what you can and cannot do with your army so people understand?
Yeah, so it's 2,000 points, which is pretty standard nowadays. You can have 1 or 2 detachments. It's pretty much geared towards mono-faction, but there are some exceptions. So it used to be that you had to take a battalion or brigade plus something else as an optional detachment. Mm-hmm. Now you can take 1 or 2 detachments, but there's no stipulation that it's a battalion or brigade. However, there's a bunch of different criteria. So I think if you are, for example, guard, you can take a detachment of assassins or a detachment of Inquisition. You can't take, for example, a detachment of knights. If you're, I think, Space Marines, it's pretty much the same. I think most Imperium can just take Inquisition and assassins as your optional extra. I think last year they had it that you could take 1 knight detachment as well, but then there were so many people that also took knights that they've now locked that down. So pretty much only knight faction players can take it. So you're predominantly locked into your one kind of mono faction that you're going to select. There is a bit of variation, I think, maybe for Drakari in terms of your sub-factions that you have to be. So normally you'll get, for example, guard, you get your regiment sub-faction, you have to have that being the same across. So if you have 2 detachments, they've got to be 2 detachments of the same regiment, for example. Gotcha. So you can't have 2 Space Marine chapters, it's got to be 1 Space Marine chapter across up to 2 detachments, basically.
Understood. And how does that work with Agents of the Imperium? So if you wanted to add an Inquisitor to your Ultramarines detachment, which is totally game legal, is there any special stipulations around that? Or
they haven't specifically said, but I believe it's the same as last year. So yes, you can do that in addition. So you can still have a regular detachment plus play your stratagem to gain an Inquisitor or gain an assassin.
Yeah, because it's not a stratagem anymore since they upgraded it. It's just put it in your army list.
Yes, yeah. So I believe you can still do that in addition to having your extra detachment also being Inquisition if you really want it to be.
Awesome. I mean, it makes sense though, right? I mean, again, ultimately, these guys are trying to, create a more, balanced and or, inviting gaming environment that removes some of the more gamey attributes. Although, broadly speaking, most people seem to be of the consensus that 9th edition beautifully supports the single battalion army list anyway. So I suppose, in a weird sort of way, having that kind of stipulation in effect now means that some of the more, optimized lists that we're seeing in 9th edition so far could easily be supported. But again, I appreciate that's probably not in the spirit of the endeavour, and most of the 25, 30 attendees that are going to this year's No Retreat will almost certainly not be, trying their damnedest to win the thing. Although, Phil, who's the main competition, you think? Who have you got to beat to win it?
Oh,
are there some big scary people there, or is it all, fluff bunnies?
No, well, there's a couple of people that have won previous events. So, I think Joe Moscadini, I think his surname is, he's a Blood Angels player, which is a really beautiful Blood Angels army as well. He's always he's a really good player. So he's probably one to watch. He'll be probably top 3, if not top 5, quite easily.
Yeah.
There's a couple of people, I'm trying to remember his name. There's a guy called Tristan, can't remember his surname. He's a pretty competitive player as well, if I remember rightly.
Okay.
There's always a few. There's always a few tryhards for sure. I wouldn't necessarily say Paulie's a tryhard, but he's there. He's gonna try his best with his Drakari, for sure.
He's let down by the fact that he's a useless player, isn't he?
Do you know what? I don't know. I'm trying to think if I've played against him before. I don't think I have. So it'll be interesting if we get a game in to see how that one pans out.
You'll smash him, mate. That's how it'll pan out.
Well, let's hope so. Fingers crossed. But do you know what? I never do well against Dark Elders, so we'll see.
Well, we can talk through the list, and maybe we can, Maybe we can strategize around killing Drakari specifically, and
just on that off chance, yes.
Well, exactly. I mean, all Drakari army lists are the same. Here is a load of Talos. Here is a load of Venoms. Here's some Archons and some Warriors. Oh, and Drazar, because Drazar's always good. I mean, that's the problem with the relative limited range that Drakari offer. Really, I mean, it seems like a lot of stuff until you realise that really only Talos is Venoms. And Drazar are any good. And then once you arrive at that reality, you're like, oh, cool. There you go. I mean, I'd love to see someone just spam Hellions for a change, just to see if they could do anything. The short answer to that query is they can't do anything, but you never know. It could happen.
Just an additional note before I start on the list, we're using the new GT pack. I believe there's 6 missions that we're playing in total. Oh, actually, it might have gone back down to 5 but it's split over the three days now. So there's 1 on Friday, I think 2 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday.
Ooh,
originally, we were going to have 3 games on the Saturday, but they were like, "Oh, let's just keep it chilled and have a long lunch." But if people do still want to play a game in that break time, they can do basically.
Amazing. That's pretty cool going. So, do you know which 3 of the mission? Admittedly, most of the missions are the same. It just comes down to deployment, really. Then.
Yes, yeah, I do.
Which 6 missions? Sorry, not 3 or 5. God, get my numbers right.
If we break for a second, I can get the list.
2 hours later.
All right, guys. So he's got his list. Tell us, Phil, what missions are you playing?
Yeah, so I've handily pre-tabbed out all the games in my little GT book.
What a pro!
Exactly, it's a top tip there. So the first game is Vital Intelligence.
Oh, do you know the number for Vital Intelligence while I thumb through my own?
Number 13.
13 is your first one, Vital Intelligence.
Page 42 and 43.
There it is. Oh, wonky deployment. Why would anyone choose that?
Yeah, it's a sort of old Vanguard style deployments with 4 objectives along the diagonal center line that is parallel to the deployment zones. And then there's 1 objective in each deployment zone going in the other direction from corner to corner. And they make a little note about how, those ones are sort of slightly wonky in terms of their position because they're not 90-degree angle to the others.
It's an interesting secondary objective that this mission offers, because you've got data intercept, which is basically perform this action next to some objectives. Depending on how many objectives you perform this action next to, you gain that many points. Which is interesting, I suppose.
Yeah.
Could be a useful option for some large units of guardsmen, because technically you could still theoretically be within 3 inches of 2 objectives and then perform the action, and then potentially that could class as 2 objectives for 1 action.
I wouldn't have thought so, because I'm pretty sure in the core rules they stipulate.
Can you only action one objective?
I believe so, yeah, because I think you can be next to several, but you can only hold one of them, for example.
And it has to be completed by the end of your next command phase. Yeah, no, that sounds a bit rubbish. I wouldn't go out of your way to do that secondary. But yeah, so wonky, weird deployment. What's the next one?
So the next one is the Scarum.
Okay.
Which is sort of like an I shape in terms of the non-deployment area. So you've got 2 very small
an uppercase
deployments. Yeah.
There it is.
So you're basically both deploying on the short edges.
That deployment zone is terrible, isn't it? Like this tiny little box. I've played this one before. It's a pretty mad one. But
your deployment zone is 28 inches wide, which isn't a lot. And you've got sort of, again, as I mentioned, an I shape in terms of the objectives as well. So 1 bang in the center of the board, and then 2 sort of at the edges of your deployment zone, slightly further forward.
You could make an argument though for your army. Not that I know it's in its entirety, but I'm assuming it's got tanks and things in it. You could actually argue the strategic scan is a reasonable secondary for you, because it doesn't have to be an infantry unit to perform the action. And it's actually worth 15 points fairly easily.
Should we let me just read it out for those listening at home, what strategic scan does. So 1 or more units from your army can start to perform this action at the end of your movement phase. Each unit from your army that starts to perform this action must be in range of a different objective marker that has not already been scanned by a unit from your army. The unit cannot start this action while there are any enemy units, excluding aircraft, in range of the same objective marker. This action is completed at the start of your next command phase, or at the end of the battle, whichever happens first, which is quite good if you're going last and you're on the last turn. If this action is successfully completed, that objective marker is said to have been scanned by your army. You score a number of victory points at the end of your battle, depending on how many times your unit from army completed this action as below, as shown in the table. So the only problem with this is to get max points, which is 15, you need to scan 4 objective markers, which has to be 4 different objective markers over the course of the game.
Yeah.
So I guess you could get 3 quite easily, because there's 2 on your half of the table edge, 1 in the middle, and then you'd have to make a dash to one of the others, which is 8 inches away from your half of the table.
Yeah, but the thing is, right, is like, again, I don't know the entire contents of your army just yet, so I can't, entirely assume what's going to happen. But based on the positioning of all this stuff, it'd be really easy for vehicles to roll up on 2 objectives turn 1, potentially be relatively out of line of sight, potentially. I mean, again, don't know for certain, but even then, if you had, like, infantry, admittedly you can't advance and perform this action, but if they were in some kind of transport like a Chimera or a Taurox, although I know you're not in the habit of taking Tauroxes, you could get out 3 inches, move 6, so that's a 9-inch move, and get on those objectives fairly painlessly. And at that point, it's like, actually, in a turn, you could probably get 2 of these objectives turn 1. You probably aren't going to struggle to get the third one. And at that point, you're kind of going, well, I got 10 VPs and it's turn 2, which is a pretty good option for secondaries. I mean, some secondaries only score 10 after you've done actions 3 turns in a row. So I quite like strategic scan as a secondary. I actually think it's a viable option for a lot of armies, especially when tanks can do it,
Yeah, well, yeah, it's interesting. I'm just looking at the actual actions rule, and there's nothing that stipulates that it has to be an infantry unit. So you're right, it can be a tank.
Yeah.
But I guess this is a matter of, would you want to spend 100 odd points of your, 150 for a Lehman Russ day, not doing anything for a turn? Maybe.
And again, though, it's actually quite a good secondary if you're going second, because you might find yourself in a situation where at the end of the game, you might be like, I've only got like 3 units alive, and I've sort of positioned them in such a way that actually I can potentially score these 3 in the final game turn.
Yeah.
And then the game ends. And you might find that you could pull a win out of the bag with that, because
that's what I like, that unlike some of the others, you can have multiple units do this all at once.
Yeah.
And like I said, you do it on the last turn if you got some tough, durable units that are going to stick around that long. And you could just be like, great, I'll do this now. And it doesn't actually matter because it's the last turn. I'm not losing out on anything, especially if you're going last, where your turn of shooting doesn't really have an effect on the game.
Yeah. Also, as well, normally, so this is what's really interesting about this secondary is, normally secondary is either stipulated it has to be infantry, and that it can't be a character. Neither of these things are stipulated here. So you could even get, like, company commanders or whatever just stood on it and go, yeah, cool, I'm not going to do anything else. Okay, fair enough, you miss out on some orders, but, it's actually, of all the secondaries, whenever I've read through all these core missions, it's one of the ones that actually seems quite viable. But there you go. What's the next one you're doing?
So the next one is Scorched Earth. So this is the kind of classic, I would say Dawn of War, but it looks like it's a bit smaller. But it's not. It's
God, you're moving all over the place. You're not in any kind of order at all.
No, I know, it's a bit mad. So now we're on page 40, which is number 12. The last one was mission 23.
Yes.
So you have 2 objectives bang on your deployment edge, and there's 2 objectives right in the centre of the sort of table edge, but sort of separated out. So there's six in total. You also have the secondary objective, which is raise. You have, at the end of the battle, a player scores 6 victory points if 1 objective marker was removed from the battle due to a successful raise objective action performed by a unit from their army during the battle, and 12 victory points if 2 objective markers were removed.
I mean, fine, but not great. 12, again, right, going back to what we were talking about when we were talking about secondaries in the last episode, it is a bit baffling to me that this is worth 12, and it's actually quite difficult to do, yet the other thing was worth 10 if you just did it 3 times, which you could do in 1 turn, no problem. It's that thing where it's like, you sort of look at it and you go,
Yeah, what seems really weird is that there's nothing that says you have to do the objective in your opponent's... Oh, no, sorry, yeah. So raise is an in-game objective, but there's a mission rule called raise objective, which is the action, which is 1 unit from your army can start to perform this action at the start of your movement phase. If it was within range of an objective marker that can be raised, and no enemy units, excluding aircraft, are within range of that objective marker, player A can only attempt to raise objective markers labelled B, and B can only raise objective markers A, which are basically the ones on the edge of your opponent's deployment zone. This action is completed at the end of your turn. If this action is successfully completed, the objective marker is raised and removed from the battlefield. Yeah, so it's not like you can wait till the end of the game and just raise your own objective markers. You've got to do it in your opponent's deployment zone, which is super hard. I
mean, again, though, right? If you weren't a a Astra Militarum Krieg player, you were a Death Guard player, you could potentially send some highly durable Death Shroud Terminators up there, or something of that nature, or something super fighty that could get stuck in and push people away from those objectives and then raise them, and then at that point, you know, rob your opponent of easy objectives, which can create quite an interesting strategy. But that strategy is available in this mission without taking that risk in return for a good but not incredible amount of victory points, you know?
Mm.
There are definitely better secondary objectives, but it's nice to see Dawn of War deployment with that. So yes, there we go. What's the next one, Phil?
So number 4.
Number 4
is number 32. It's Sweep and Clear, which is table quarters.
Not too bad.
With a classic 9-inch sort of bubble in the centre that you can't deploy in. There's one objective marker bang in the centre of the map, and then there's sort of one in each table quarter, pretty much in the middle of each of those table quarters. There's a mission rule called Objective Cleared. In this mission, if you control any objective marker at the end of your command phase, it remains under your control unless your opponent controls it at the end of a subsequent phase, even if you have no models within range of it, which is kind of cool and does actually combo really well with Raise the Banners. I think we talked about that in a previous podcast, because I sort of think Raise the Banners should just act like that all the time, but apparently it only really works in this mission. Then you also have the secondary objective Direct Assault. Score 3 victory points if you control either of the objective marker in the centre of the battlefield or the objective marker in your opponent's deployment zone at the end of the turn, or 5 victory points if you control both of these objective markers at the end of your turn. Which is like, controlling the centre one, yeah, that's doable, but controlling your opponent's one and the centre one seems really hard.
Yeah, but you can synergize it quite nicely with Line Breaker, and then you can just basically just become a hammer and run up the middle and not think about anything other than just smashing into the middle of your opponent's army. Because
what just taking a ton of deep striking stuff.
Well, not even deep striking stuff, just get in your vehicles and go forwards. Because the thing is, what a lot of people are being incentivized to do is control multiple objectives around the board, is to essentially maneuver themselves out and around you. Now, obviously, that can create a bit of a, you know, bull's horn style situation, to reference the old Zulu film, you know, where they kind of distract you with the middle bit and then wrap you with the horns of the bull, or whatever they were talking about for the strategy from Zulu, for the Zulu warriors. But nonetheless, like, it actually can become quite rewarding if you also combine it with Line Breaker, because from about turn 2 onwards, you're going to potentially be in a situation where you're going to be getting the 4 victory points a turn for line breaking, and then you only need to do this for 3 turns, holding on to both of them, and then you're going to get your 15 points out of that as well. And it just single-mindedly focuses you on forwards, because a lot of the time people are doing engaged on all fronts, so they're trying to be in all the different table quarters, or they're trying to, they're trying to do clever, subtle things like deploy scramblers, because that's quite handy. Whereas this is actually, if used correctly, it can become quite an interesting strategy, because you're just going, cool, I'm just going to smash forwards. And anything that can potentially award you the maximum payload of victory points in 3 turns is worth a punt, because there's a lot of secondaries that don't give you 15 victory points, you know?
That's true, and I guess it's like, it's a bit tricky to get over to their objective, but you basically have 3 turns to get there, because if you can start... No, you've got 2... You want to be scoring it by turn 2, don't you?
Well, no, you want to be scoring it by turn 3.
Turn 3, yeah, so you get 3 turns of movement to get there, which should be doable.
And also, as well, this is end of player turn. This isn't a command phase thing. This is just at the end of your turn. If you control it in your turn, you've got it.
Yeah, that is pretty good.
Yeah, especially if you're taking spearheads with Lehman Russes and you've got OBSEC Lehman Russes. They're a perfect thing to wedge at your enemy. Just like,
Oilers. Well, yeah, but then you go, do you want to sacrifice grinding advance just to max move them. Maybe.
Yeah, but then it becomes a case of like early doors. You send in infantry, then all of this stuff starts rolling over the top of it. You can slowly get there. You don't need to do it straight away. And hey, even if you control the middle objective for 5 turns, which is totally realistic to control the middle objective for 5 turns, you're 15.
Yeah, that is true.
Which is better than, which is a better rate of success than on all fronts. It's a better, it's just good, man. And then you combine it with line breaker, as I say, and you can just forwards, because their deployment zone is relatively vast, and you could sneak a couple units in places and do some stuff. I don't hate it in combination with this mission setup. It's very unsubtle, but I don't think a lot of people would see it coming.
True.
Anyway, because no one really evaluates or thinks about these secondaries for these missions, and some of them are actually good.
I always assume most of these secondaries are just a bit rubbish.
So far I think direct assault and strategic scan are 2 good options. So, but anyway, what's the last one, Phil? What's game 5?
Well, there's potentially up to 6. But I think it is 5, but I don't know which one's being removed. That's the issue.
Well, just take a guess, because we don't, I worry we're lingering too much on this before we get into your army.
So next one is Battle Lines, which is number 22.
Okay, Battle Lines.
So kind of classic. It's not Dawn or Hammer and Anvil. That's it.
There's the words.
One objective in the middle of your deployment zone, and 2 objectives on the centre line down the middle. There's also secondary objective is Vital Ground. At the end of each of your command phases, you score 3 victory points if you control the objective marker in your opponent's deployment zone.
Awful.
Great. And score 2 victory points for each objective marker that you control that is not in either player's deployment zone, for a maximum of 7 victory points. Not that great then. This secondary objective cannot be scored in the first battle round.
A maximum of 7 victory points per turn, surely.
Well, no, because the maximum, because there's only 2. It says 2 victory points for each objective marker that you control that is in neither player's deployment zone. There's only 2, so that is 4. Technically only 4. So when they say max 7, they must mean max 7 over the whole game.
Oh wow! Well, if that is true, that's terrible. If it's not the case, it's potentially viable, but still not great. It's not one of the better ones, for sure. And also, you've entered into a world of a level of ambiguity that I think is not even worth entertaining. If it doesn't, if it's not clear, don't waste your time with it.
And then let's quickly do the last one. Overrun.
Right.
Number 31. It's a Dawn of War. 1 objective in the middle of each deployment zone, and then sort of 2 objectives on your side and their side that are just in front of your deployment zone, basically 2 inches away from it. And the special secondary objective is called Overrun. Score a number of victory points at the end of your command phase if you control 1 or more objective markers that is within your opponent's territory.
Terrible.
As shown in the table below. So the opponent's territory is, your half. So there's up to 3. So it's 2 victory points for 1, 3 for 2 objectives, and 5 points for all 3 objectives. Awful. Which is 10 inches away from the centre line and 16 inches from centre line. So pretty far in, and they're all spread out as well.
Yeah, awful. Don't waste your time on that one. That's awful. No.
Okay, well, that's pretty conclusive. So there's 2 good ones in there.
Yeah, so should you play... I've forgotten what ones they were now. Should you play Sweep and Clear and or... where's the other one now? And the Scouring. Consider the secondaries, because I think they're quite good for those 2. Mainly because of how you score them and some of the weird little loopholes. I think Sweep and Clear is good. Strategic Scan is good. Because strategic scan is good in the Scouring because anything can do it, which is massive because normally actions can't be done by anything, but these can. And then in terms of direct assault, it's the fact that it isn't a hold on to it till your command phase situation. It's an immediate benefit, which is also really strong because you just get it. And there's so few secondary objectives that reward that many points for just a Hail Mary play, especially if you've got OBSEC units. You just go, Cool. What's hanging out on your objective? Oh, some unit of devastators, or some unit of, hive guard, or insert the kind of unit that sits at the back of the board, some tanks, some whatever it is. Cool. There's a unit of guardsmen, whatever, and you don't really care what happens to them. It's just the fact is by doing that and holding the middle, that's 5 points in the bank. And it's like, cool.
Yeah. Well, actually, Toke recently, I was speaking to him, made a really interesting point, and that was you could have an artillery piece with a crew, which are 2 separate units. The crew could be doing an action, such as raise banners. They can't do anything, then they can't shoot, for example. But the gun can still shoot, because the stipulation for an artillery piece is it just needs a unit of crew members just to be within 3 inches or 6 inches or whatever. So the gun can still fire, and the crew are just sat around doing an action to score you some victory points, but you're kind of maximising your efficiency, because they wouldn't really be doing anything anyway.
How gamey. How gamey of you.
No, I was like, oh, that's quite clever, but it's only really ever going to work for that one objective in your deployment zone, so it's not particularly game breaking in any way.
Yeah, but again, it's good to have it as an option if you're going to deploy scramblers, for example. There are some viabilities to that as a thing. Yeah. Anyway, there you go. So that was the missions that you're facing, and now that we know what you're up against, let's talk about what's in your army. So why don't you kick us off, Phil? What type of detachment have you taken?
So to start off with, I've gone for a battalion, and this was originally because I just assumed it was the old rules where you had to take a battalion. Mm-hmm. But for the time being, let's say it's a battalion. We might consolidate it in, because I've taken 2. The first one's a battalion of Death Corps of Krieg, obviously, because that's what I'm taking. I'll highlight this now. I'm not taking any Inquisition, and I'm not taking any Assassins. I decided to theme my army around an armoured company. So basically lots of tanks, and I basically wanted it that the only troops I'm taking are troops that are going inside transports, which was my stipulation just for myself in terms of a theme, which does limit myself because I can't just take loads of infantry to screen stuff, which might be more useful, but I kind of like the idea of it. And originally I was going to paint up some centaurs, which are the small kind of artillery transporting transports that can take up to five a squad of 5 men. So grenadiers or engineers. So I was like originally, that was my original idea, but then it morphed into this. So first one's a battalion. I'm taking my officer, my warlord is a field officer, so just a really standard guy. I can get 1 order out of him. I've given him Korov's Aquila as a relic, because there's not really any good relics anymore, because we don't get access to the Vigilus special detachments. So I was like, because I'm spending some CP at the beginning of the game, I might as well take Korov's Aquila to try and get some more back. If
Seems
anyone,
reasonable.
then I've gone for a tank commander. And this one I thought was just like, I'll just take it because it looks cool more than anything else. But it's the Executioner plasma cannon, so big plasma cannon on top, and 2 plasma cannon sponsons, and a las cannon on the hull. Nice. So sort of lots of anti-tank, sort of heavy, like an elite killer basically. Then I've got my troops. I've got 4 5-man squads of grenadiers. So I've got 1 5-man squad, which has 2 specialist weapon guys with regular flamers. Then I've got a heavy weapon squad of the heavy flamer. So that also gives me so that's 4 guys plus the Watchmaster. So basically, Watchmaster's just got chainsword and hotshot las pistol. Everyone else has got flamers. Well, okay. So that's my little kind of burner squad for dealing with some infantry. Then I've got another squad of 5. This time, Watchmaster, same as before. 2 regular grenadiers with hotshot las guns, and 2 specialist guys with melter guns. Solid. So that's a bit of anti-tank in that one. And then the other 2 squads, I believe, are exactly the same, where they're just standard 5-man squads. So Watchmaster with hotshot las gun, Oh, actually, this one's slightly different. These guys have las guns rather than las pistols, and then I've got 4 standard men with hotshot las guns in those 2 squads, and they are going to go inside a Storm Chimera each. So the Storm Chimera has a heavy flame on the front. The difference with the Storm Chimera is it comes with an autocannon turret rather than a multi-laser, but disappointingly you can't swap it out for a heavy flamer, which I know is a kind of hot combo that the standard guard players like to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've saved a bit of money by not taking the Storm Armor and Mine Plow, which is something I always assumed you had to take, but then when I was looking through the rules, I realised it's an optional extra. It costs 10 points. The Mine Plow's pointless because it basically nullifies the effect of minefields, which don't exist in the game and never have in 8th edition. So that's fun rules from Forge World. Well done. The Storm Armor is quite useful. Basically, if you get hit by a Strength 4 or less weapon, you get +1 to your save, which is kind of cool. But it's 10 points, and I wanted to save those points elsewhere, so I took that off, basically.
Does the incursor mine count as a minefield, or is it just a grenade?
Do you know what? If I came up against someone, I would be like, "Come on, mate, it's a mine. Let's count it." I think I think what you do is you get like a 4-up invuln save against mines or something like that. So it's not like you just instantly ignore it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that is probably.
Although you wouldn't do this time because you've taken it off.
Well, no, this time I've taken it off, so it wouldn't matter.
So inevitably you're going to face something mine-like now.
Yes, well, inevitable. Well, there is, I have to say, an awful lot of Space Marine players at the event, so there's a good chance that I might come across it once or twice.
It's entirely possible.
So inside the Storm Chimeras are the Grenadier squads. So I'll probably mix and match. So one of the regular 5-man squads with one of the specialist squads. So I've got a kind of anti-tank Chimera and an anti-infantry Chimera. Inside, the field officer is going to go in one of them. Alongside, in each one, I've got an astropath. So I've got 2 astropaths that are going to rock in each Chimera as well. Originally, I really wanted to have 2 field officers to go in each one, so they're kind of equally balanced with the Grenadiers, an astropath in each, and a field officer in each for orders. But again, I had to sort of tweak the points around a bit, so I had to sort of make that sacrifice. One astropath has Night Shroud, and the other one has Psychic Barrier. And they're pretty much just going to be using those on the tanks that are going to be nearby, just to buff them up.
Nice.
Alongside them on the Chimera chassis style, I've got 2 Hellhounds with the standard heavy flamer on the front and the Inferno cannon, plus the old classic of the track guards, which means no matter how much they degrade in wounds, they still move at full movement. Nice. Which is pretty good. And potentially something worth investing in the future on things like Lehman Russes if you are going to do a tank-heavy army, but not something I've done on my models so far, but might add them on down the line.
So you haven't added them to the model, so as a result, you're not going to take them on the model.
Well, yeah. So I've got them on so they're modelled on the Hellhounds,
but not the Lehman Russes.
But not the Lehman Russes, because actually Lehman Russes don't really care about moving all that much. But if, as I was saying, you're going to run tank heavy in the future, maybe I'd want to paint some up and stick them on.
Yeah, it seems like a good option, especially with the way grinding advance works, right? Because then when your movement is reduced, because doesn't a Lehman Russet its lowest movement move like 3?
Yeah, so I guess then you're technically only moving
1 inch.
1.5. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, But then when you start getting into half measures, it gets into a bit of a weird world. But that's the thing, isn't it? But then all of a sudden, if it always stays at 8 or 10 inches is its max, isn't it?
10, yeah.
So if it always stays at 10, that's actually really useful. Because being able to still move 5, and especially if you're taking them in spearheads and they've got obsects, being able to always move 10 is really useful.
Yeah, for sure.
How many points is a track guard?
Hold on, let me double check. I believe it's 10.
That's a lot, actually, for that ability, though.
It's 5.
Yeah. I absolutely no-brainer, mate. I'm surprised you're not adding those to your Lehman Russes.
I will, yes, furiously be painting them up. No, well, my army is 2,000 points on the nose. So you tell me if I should be, once I've read it all out, whether I should be swapping things out or not.
Get rid of a few of those flamers, mate.
Say that again.
Get rid of a few of those flamers. Change them out for track guards. That's what you need.
Oh, maybe.
Those flamers will do nothing for you, man. I know how flamers work in 9th edition. Unless you're a salamander, waste of time.
Yeah, maybe we'll see. And then to round out the battalion, I've also got a basilisk, which I've sneakily converted up from my Armageddon pattern Medusa, which has literally, I've got two of them. They basically played in the very first and maybe second game of 8th edition, and then I haven't touched them ever since. And they're nicely painted up, so I was like, oh, do you know what? I'm going to convert one up. I basically made a bit of a barrel extension out of some plasticard. I detailed up with some rivets that I painted up to match, and then
You made it out of plasticard. You didn't just get like a straw.
No, well, it's plasticard tubing or styrene tubing is more correct. So it is a giant straw, and basically I then inserted, because they're all telescopic if you get the right sizes, so they fit inside each other perfectly. So on one end, which is the sort of the barrel muzzle end, I guess, I inserted another one to make it a bit thicker, because otherwise they're pretty thin. And then I've sort of wrapped some styrene, some more plasticard around the other end, just to give it some detail, which I added on some rivets to. And then I've done a transfer with those white stripe kill markings that the Krieg sometimes has. Mm-hmm. So I've added that on. So that, and then I drilled out the barrel of the Medusa gun, so it can all fit in nicely.
Awesome. Yeah,
so that was a nice, reasonably simple conversion. It looks pretty good. I saw a guy do something similar at Warhammer World one time, and I had a nice chat with him many years ago, and I was like, that's a great idea. and now I've been encouraged and inspired to do it. So I haven't decided how I'm going to do my tank cases, but everyone seems to think that I think it's heavy payload or full payload is the one to go for on a basilisk, because it turns the D3 damage to flat 3, which is a sort of a small consolation for the lack of the flat 3 damage relic battle cannon. At one point I had 2 basilisks, and I was potentially going to give them both full payload, but again I decided to swap out the tanks, so I'd have 1 basilisk instead. Which is probably going to be my vehicle that's going to be sat in my deployment zone on my objective, hopefully with not being swamped by loads of other outflanking infantry, but who knows how that one will pan out. And then I'm spending 3 CP on a spearhead detachment, again Deathcore of Krieg, because it has to be. In this I've got 2 tank commanders. I've got a demolisher cannon with a las cannon on the hull, no sponsons, and then the other one I've given it the Punisher cannon and heavy flamer sponsons, which I'm not entirely sure about. Heavy stubber on the top and a las cannon on the hull, and I'm thinking about giving this one slow and purposeful tank case, because obviously you can give 2 vehicles for tank case if you just don't give your warlord a warlord trait, which is why the warlord ends up being just a regular guy. I could make it a tank, but actually why would I do that? Because then I'm encouraging someone to take Slay the Warlord, because you can easily pop him quite easily, whereas a guy that's a bit
cut off the head, you mean?
Yes. So let me talk about the others, and then we go through the loadouts. I've got then 3 more Lehman Russes in the heavy support slots, and as you mentioned earlier, all the Lehman Russes gain in the spearhead gain the OBSEC ability. So I've got 2 that are the Conquerors, which are the little known Forge World ones, which are basically 48-inch range battle cannons with Stormbolters on the side, which is coaxial. The Stormbolters have a 24-inch range. If you shoot at the same target with both guns, basically the main gun gets to reroll all its hits, not just failed hits, but all of them. So 48-inch battle cannon, but within 24 inches, I get to reroll all those shots, which combos quite well with the fact that they're not tank commanders, but I'm giving them an innate ability to reroll within 24 inches. And as I don't know if I mentioned already, taking another Leman Russ Demolisher as well.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, lots of short-range Leman Russes. The one that's maybe going to hang out at the back a bit more is the non-obsec one, which is predominantly, I think, 36 or 48-inch range on those plasma cannons.
Yeah, 36 for the plasma cannon. I can't remember for the big
I think
one.
the heavy one might be 48, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I can never remember on that one, but definitely 36 for the plasma cannon, and then probably could be 48 for the what's it called now? Plasma executioner, isn't it?
Plasma executioner. Well, while I'm here, I can look up the rules.
Look up the rules. But that's a tank commander as well, right? With the plasma executioner and all that
yes,
stuff.
so he's the standard one in the battalion, but he's a tank commander. Yeah, so I can obviously overcharge and give him reroll ones to shoot, which is sort of the plan, basically. It's a bit weird because it's like it's cool, but potentially just making him a demolisher would be better, because it's like it's pretty much the same points. It's like, yeah, it's shorter range, but I'm doing then strength 10, -4 AP, D6 damage for D6 shots, or 2D6 with grinding advance, versus strength 8 if I overcharge, -3 and 2 damage. Mm-hmm. It's like, why wouldn't you just go for the demolisher? Like, it makes more sense. But I'm kind of going rule of cool with the plasma.
But also, the plasma is super reliable at dealing with Space Marines, right?
Yeah, but if you got something that does D6 damage, you've only got a 1 in 6 chance of not killing.
Yeah, but when you roll that one, you really feel it, mate.
Well,
that's the problem.
yeah, that is true. It gives you kind of a lot of reliance on it's just going to work.
And don't forget, mate, for no retreat, the influx of free wound models in Space Marine armies is relatively limited still. It's only the aggressors
aggressors, inceptors.
So aggressor variants, because inceptors.
And anything that's gravis, basically.
Yeah, so the gravis guys, and then because Terminators are still 2 wounds. Okay, fair enough. Centurions are 4 wounds, but that's pretty optimal for you as well, because you've got the 2 damage, so 2 shots from that can sort of see it done. I don't massively hate that decision. I think, in certain matchups, you're gonna chew through a lot of dudes, especially if you come up against Primaris heavy armies, which is reasonable to assume you will when facing off against lots of Space Marines, as you've said you had. Primaris models are way nicer looking than the old school models, with some exceptions. Obviously, there's some beautiful old Space Marine sculpts, but majoritively speaking, we can pretty much acknowledge that despite their lack of character, Primaris Marines are pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're going to see a lot of them. So, the fact that you can use that guy and just chew through 5-man units of Space Marines relatively painlessly is pretty amazing. Plus, didn't plasma cannons get the blast special rule?
Yeah, so the standard cannon and the big cannon both get blast. The execution of plasma cannon is also 36-inch range, so all guns are pretty much.
And blast is
36.
If you're firing blast at a 5-man unit, the minimum amount of shots you get is free.
Yes, which works quite well when on the sponsons, because they're D3. So you're kind of maximizing your number of shots automatically with those ones.
So like an opening salvo, you could just literally be like, cool, I'm going to shoot these 2 plasma cannons at this 1 unit of Primaris Marines, and then I'm going to shoot the Executioner at another. And you're not going to probably kill all 5 Marines, but you'll probably kill 3 or 4 from 2 units, which is a pretty substantial hit to a Space Marine player, because 2 units of Primaris Marines is 200 points there or thereabouts. So you could kill, 140 points worth of Primaris Marines with an opening salvo, which is pretty strong, and that's not disputing or discounting, the use of your las cannon, which can obviously then shoot at something else. And obviously you're hitting on freeze, you're not re-rolling ones on the plasma cannons, but you are on the executioner. And you're obviously not re-rolling the one for the las cannon, because the way the whole re-roll ones works, it's for turret weapons only, right?
No. Sorry, grinding advance is only on the turret weapon, but when you do the order to re-roll ones, that's on everything.
Crikey. Well, then in which case, yeah, I mean, that's really strong, because all of a sudden if you're getting 6 shots against a unit of intercessors, hitting on freeze, re-rolling ones, I mean, realistically, you can assume that's 5 hits. You're going to be strength 8, so you're going to be wounding on 2s. No re-rolls, admittedly, on that, but still, wounding on 2s. You can safely assume that more times than not, you're probably going to get all 5 wounds. So, yeah, I mean, and then they've got to roll 6s. So, unless they roll extraordinarily well, you should guarantee killing 4 Primaris Marines out of 5 with just those. And then, obviously, the thing on top fires at another unit, does a good amount of damage there, and last cannon. I mean, it's a really good tank, man. Especially when you're shooting that executioner twice. I mean, that's crazy. Like, that thing's going to do some work. How many shots does that thing have?
D6.
But blast, right?
Yeah, plus blast.
So minimum 6 shots out of that when you're firing it twice, but potentially 12. I mean, that's going to delete Primaris units. Like, you chuck that thing at a unit of eliminators, you chuck that thing at a unit of intercessors, obviously blade guard, things like that. You could just melt them. So, no, I like it, mate. Rule of cool is one thing, but it's also a super efficient tank in the way the game is played at the moment.
Yeah. I think the place where there's sort of wiggle room to swap things around is in the spearhead, where I've got a Demolisher tank commander and the Punisher one, and I don't think the Punisher one's super optimized, because I was at my original theory, and I've probably said it here before, is that weirdly the tank commanders don't get it, and I could potentially play it as that they do, but that's not in the rules, so I won't. But the standard Mars Alpha pattern Lehman Russes, which only the generic ones that aren't tank commanders have a special rule where they get hit by a strength 4 or less weapon, they get +1 to their save, which is normally completely rubbish. But in the new game, where you go, I don't care if my tanks get stuck into combat, it might be slightly better, especially if you've just got a tank-only army where you're just going to be shot with lots of bolters as well. It's kind of beneficial. So one theory I had before was just to take, rather than having a tank commander with the Punisher cannon, make that a standard tank. So I'm only hitting on 4s. Potentially, if I've got a nearby tank commander, I can make him reroll the 1s still, which is kind of cool. And then he's got the Flame of Sponsons as well. So if he gets stuck into combat, he's only hitting on 5s, but rerolling 1s potentially. But then the Flamers are just auto-hitting anyway. So I don't really care if that tank just gets stuck in combat with a unit.
I mean, there is something to be said for having a spearhead tank, right? One that you're just hurling at your opponent to make a problem out of. And there is a psychological impact presented by, utilizing the Punisher cannon, because whether or not it's actually any good within the 9th edition meta is neither here nor there, because there's a lot of psychological trauma that particular weapon represents. People
will always target the Punisher tank first, normally. And my plan was to give it the slow and purposeful, which is -1 AP. So you're getting 40 shots, strength 5, -1 AP. And the thing about the Punisher tank is it's normally okay at killing light infantry, but rubbish at anything else, because it just lacks an AP. So the fact you can make it -1 AP, I'm like, oh, that's really good. And I sort of think there might be a benefit swapping them around. So I've got 2 Demolisher tank commanders, and I've taken the tank ace on the standard tank, because it doesn't need to be a character, it can just be any vehicle. So I've got a standard Lehman Russ with the tank ace, and then I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket, because if I have it as a tank commander, it makes it a no-brainer for my opponent to kill. Whereas if I say you can either kill the Punisher tank with -1 AP that's just a kind of a regular tank, or I make you go for my tank commanders, it's like I'm then I've got a bit of a fail-safe. It's like, okay, you've killed the Punisher, but I've still got 2 tank commanders rocking demolished cannons, which is pretty scary.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
like, and if you kill the tank commander with demolished cannon, I've still got my Punisher cannon with -1 AP.
Yeah.
It makes him less efficient when he gets stuck in combat because he's shooting from 4s to 5s, which is why at one point I was thinking about taking a Trojan for the laugh. They're so expensive. They're like 100 points. But you get to reroll all your shots. So I was like, I'll take a crappy regular tank, hitting on 4s, but I'm rerolling everything. Like, that's damn good. That's as good as a tank commander. But it's like, who wants to spend 100 odd points just to do that? So that's why I dropped the Trojan from the list. But it was a fun idea at one point. And it was also a way of getting an extra 5-man squad in there as well, because it is a transport that can take up to 6 models.
Mm. I mean, I don't hate that idea, but I think you always need to build in a certain level of what's the word I'm looking for? A certain
Redundancy.
Redundancy. Thank you. In your army list, you always need something that performs a certain function, and I think the good thing about the Punisher is it does represent that, because, yeah, as I say, there's a psychological element to a thing that can shoot 40 times. Like, it instinctively, like, breeds fear in your opponent, because even though those 40 shots, rationally speaking, very rarely do anything effective, sometimes you're not dealing with rationality in these situations. Sometimes you're dealing with the emotional response, and anything's possible when you're rolling 40 dice. You can get very lucky. I remember when we went to a campaign weekend, and there was like this weird corn buffing system they introduced that was like, now...
Was this the Skulls one?
Yeah, it was the Skulls one. And that was like, now your Chaos players, or the Chaos players, get +1 attack on a unit. And I was like, cool, I'll give it to my cultists, because I was running Corn Demonkin back in 7th edition. And I was like, cool, now my cultists have got 4 attacks each on the charge, and they've all got rending, because that's what you've given me. So, you know, I was rolling 40 dice when my 10-man unit of cultists charged in, and I had rending. So there was a chance that my cultists could, slap up Imperial Knights, which they did. It was the funniest thing ever when 10 cultists ran into an Imperial Knight, killed it with rending, and then it fell backwards and exploded onto another Imperial Knight and wiped it out. So a unit of cultists killed 2 Imperial Knights in a one. And that was 40 dice that got that done. And so, you know, there's always that psychological element that still applies, I feel.
I do have another combo to tie with the Punisher, because obviously -1 IP, I was like, brilliant. But, you know, Space Marines in cover are always tricky. But that's where the Astropaths come in, because they've got a special ability. It's not psychic power. I think it's at the beginning of a shooting phase. You select a target that is a unit that's within 18 inches of the Astropath, and any unit within 6 inches of the Astropath can ignore cover against that target, which is something I always forget about, but would combo really well with some of the tanks or infantry, but especially the Punisher cannon. So -1 AP plus ignore cover, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great combo, especially with the prevalence of eliminators. There's always a unit of eliminators in a Space Marine army. Yeah. And them with their stupid, we've got a 2+ or a +2 to our cover saves, or rather our cover save is +2 rather than +1, so they've got a 1-up save when on a ruin, and then it's like, yay, but then all of a sudden if you ignore that cover, then all of a sudden they've got, you know, a 4-up save with your -1, which is a big change, especially when you're going to shoot them 40 times. You know, so in those instances, there's some viability to it. But I think the thing is like, if I were you, Phil, I definitely would just be looking at it going, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to roll this guy up his full 10 inches turn 1. I'm going to shoot 20 times, but I'm going to essentially make sure that I subtly explain and illustrate that it could shoot 40 times. Fill my opponent with fear and make it a priority, and then ultimately they will discover that Leman Russes are quite hard to get rid of, but ultimately, you know, it's a viable option. And if you could get the old track guards on it, Phil, which I think is an important thing, if it managed to survive, it could still go forwards even more. which is a big plus. I mean, if you remember, Phil, when we played in a doubles tournament, one of the more successful strategies we consistently pulled on people was we used your Mars pattern Hellhound or whatever it was. It was just a regular Hellhound, wasn't it?
Yes. I mean, sometimes I've run it as the Artemia one, which
that was it. That was it.
Because that's sort of what it looks like, but it's not. It's the Gryer pattern, which doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, I tend to run it as a regular Hellhound.
Yeah. So we were using that because of the fact that that thing blows up on a 4+, and it's a really funny vehicle to use against people. Because what me and Phil were doing with it was we would basically put our army on like one side of the board, or like split our army so half and half it, and then the only thing we put in the middle was that Hellhound, and we just run it forwards. And then what we were finding were people were funneling towards that Hellhound to kill it, because they were like, oh, I don't like the look of that Hellhound, while the rest of the army was like pincering around them and positioning themselves perfectly. And then you'd get someone like a Drakari player that would like throw their Talos at the Hellhound, and then you go, cool, it explodes on a 4, and then you do like a bucket load of mortal wounds to all this stuff, and it was like, yay, this is fun. So that kind of strategy, man, where you're like pushing stuff up the middle, and then, you know, distracting tactics really do work, especially on small tables, which is what we're working with now, right? Because all of these are going to be on the 44, 60-inch tables,
Yes,
right?
Yeah. I think obviously the mats and stuff are all the full size, but I think they're marking them all out, so we'll be on the super size.
But that's the thing, man. Like, that sort of strategy works really well in that space. That whole kind of, here's a problem, try and solve it kind of thing, which is not to be overlooked. And also, you can't forget, Phil, now that when you move these guys forwards their full 10 inches, Grinding Advance also used to have another advantage. Oh, no, actually, they always had the advantage, didn't they? Of Lehman Russes didn't count as moving when shooting as ever, did they? Or...
Yeah, so with the turret weapons, you never had the -1 to hit anyway.
Yeah.
But it always affected your whole mounted, like your las cannon or your sponsons, which I guess is why the las cannon's more viable now, because you can just move around and still shoot at full ballistic skill. And again, why sponsons become a bit more interesting as well.
What's the points difference between a heavy bolter and a heavy flamer on a tank?
They're exactly the same now, so they're 15 points each.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could have got some savings out of that in terms of whether you could have taken that, because that would have definitely added to your initial threat. But no, I think I like the spearheads because I like OBSEC tanks. I think they're really good. And also the thing is, right, genuinely, as long as you can get your target priorities good and you can work on dealing with the biggest problems quickly, you'll probably outlast a lot of your opponents with the army that you've just described. Because the thing is, with the way that 2,000-point armies work now with a lot of people, there's only really 3, maybe 4 units in your opponent's army that has legit anti-tank viability. And once you deal with that stuff, you know, even the aggressors, okay, fair enough, aggressors can charge you and mess you up in combat. But as long as you deal with, like, say, you know, the Melter guys or the Grav the Grav Devastator squads, and, you know, all this, like, anti-tank stuff, if you make a beeline turn 1 and you have so many options to deal with this stuff, as long as you kill all the really good anti-tank stuff early doors, you're probably going to just win out of attrition, because people are going to really struggle to chew through toughness 8 3+ armor saves, because it's just hard work. It's hard work to kill. How many wounds is a Lehman Russ? 14?
Well, I think you're right. I was going to say 12, but I think it is 14.
I think it's better than you expect it to be.
Yeah, well, it's like I haven't actually... Oh, no, it is 12.
No, 12. Well, either way, though. 12 wounds, toughness 8, 3-up save. It's hard to get through that stuff, man. That's hard going.
Yeah, I mean, it's... If I count correctly, it's 3, 4, 5... So 6 Lehman Russes, 2 Hellhounds, 2... Storm Chimeras and a Basilisk.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of tanks. I mean, at one point I was tempted to take Cyclopses because I think they'd be quite good. Well, because you could either outflank them with some CP just to get them up the board, or just to have them on the board and roll up to your opponent's objectives over a couple of turns, and be like, I'm just going to blow you off this objective.
Yeah.
But 60 points each, it's like I'd rather spend, not have two of them and have a Lehman Russ instead for pretty much the same points, which is then doing something every turn predominantly, rather than something that, if it gets there, is blowing up and killing stuff once. I mean, it is devastating, but I don't think it's necessarily worth it.
Yeah. I completely agree with you, mate. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a gimmicky army in as much as, not a gimmicky army. I hate sort of saying that. It's just a really fluffy guard tank company. And
I think a lot of people could go like, oh, it's just so much armor. It's the equivalent of going up against a knight list where most opponents, they do have a decent amount of anti-tank to deal with it, but will they have enough that could last the whole game?
Yeah,
maybe not. But I'm not expecting to win all my games. I'll hopefully win a couple.
Yeah, of course, I understand that.
But I don't think I'm gonna just stomp people because it's a durable list.
I think you'll win more games than you give yourself credit for, though. And I think don't get me wrong, I don't think this army wins hands down all the time. I think there's, most of your wins are going to be grinded out. Like, you're not going to win by massive margins, but you are going to win. Because the thing is with your army is, and I suppose the thing you got to remind yourself, and something we can work on when we're doing some play testing with this is you're going to hate taking a turn one against most armies, right? Because you've got big, easy targets, and you're going to soak up a lot of damage in turn one. And you're going to think to yourself, oh, this isn't great because I've lost this tank, or this has happened. And, you feel those casualties. But the thing is it's really easy to work out what's doing the work against you. And then it's really easy to then deal with it. And then once you've dealt with it, most people's armies start to lose viability against you, especially with things like those demolisher cannons, man, and especially on the smaller boards, because literally all you got to do turn one is obviously roll up 5, then all of a sudden you've got 24 inches of range, strength 10, -3?
4, I think.
-4, wow.
Let me double check.
D6 damage. I mean, those things are horrific. They're absolutely horrific. The only thing that's letting you down, really, Phil, is I wouldn't take them as Krieg. I'd just take them as a custom regiment.
Yeah. They're -3. Yeah. No, honestly, the thing that's letting me down is they're Krieg, but they can't, unfortunately, have to be because, if I could take a custom regiment where everyone's getting their wounds back and stuff, that would be great. Yeah. I mean, there is one option of, okay, I've got the Basilisk, which I can make it flat free. But do I really need it to be flat free when I've got a lot of demolisher cannons? But I sort of like the idea that can pick off some tough units that might be on an objective or on their objectives potentially. But maybe I go, I'm going to make one of my tank commanders get D3 wounds a turn or something.
Yeah. The only other thing I think as well with these tanks, the more and more I think about it, because the amount of points you're spending on turret, on sponsons, right? Like 30 points a tank.
So I've only got 2 tanks with sponsons.
Oh, okay, fine. That's not too bad then.
So it's not like that they've all got them, because otherwise I could make a saving. But that is 60 points, which is the price of a Cyclops.
But you could also, and this is the thing, if there was an option to potentially explore this, you could free up 100 points and try and get an assassin in, right?
Yes, but I wouldn't, purely because of the theme of the army.
What do you mean? How is an assassin not part of the theme of your army?
Because I just want to do all armored tank stuff. I mean, it would have some viability in use, and it's same like I absolutely love my Inquisitor, like my Lady Eleanor Greyhorn. Like she's one of the best looking models I've ever done. Why wouldn't I take her along just to kind of play with her and show her off? But I'm a bit like, I just like the idea of doing something different from last time.
No, I hear you.
I did that kind of mixed combo of Krieg and Assassins and Inquisition last time, so I was a bit like, I just want to do something different this time.
Yeah, because personally, I'd probably get rid of the Astropaths if I were you. I'd probably be like, get them out and then chuck an Assassin in, because an Eversaw is going to do a lot more for you over the course of 5 or 6 games than 2 Psychers.
Yeah, well, they're only 25 points each, so they have 50 points in total, which is half an assassin.
Yeah, but the thing is with them is, though, right, is they're costing you some tournament viability, if this matters, because you can no longer take Abhor the Witch. So if you're up against Thousand Suns or Grey Knights, I don't know if there are any Thousand Suns or Grey Knights players there. Maybe there isn't, so if that's the case...
Well, they have announced the list. I can't remember 1,000 Suns. There are a couple of Chaos players. I wouldn't be surprised if there are. I'm sure there must be a Grey Knights player, but I could be wrong.
But that's the thing, right? It's like, if you come up against Grey Knights or even Elder or Chaos of some description, Abhor the Witch is such a powerful secondary that it's so worth not taking Psychers to get it, you know? And then if you add in, like, an Eversaw, because everyone overlooks the Eversaw. Everyone goes, oh, Vindicare, get yourself a Vindicare. And it's like, no, because actually the Eversaw perfectly complements an army list like what you've done. Because you just put it in reserves, and then turn 2, it's in your opponent's back lines, messing up stuff. And that's what I love about the Eversaw. It's 100 points of a nuisance. And it just runs around doing whatever it wants to do, having a great time, mauling people. And it could cause so much frustration to your enemies having an Eversaw running around your back lines. And no one really expects it, because most people are thinking, oh yeah, if I see an assassin, it'll be a Vindicare. But the thing is, this game has almost rendered the Vindicare weirdly hopeless, because they're quite easily neutered. But Eversaws are great, man. Just chuck an Eversaw. And you've got a beautiful looking Eversaw with that flamey skull head. Chuck that in. Run it about.
The flamey skull head is the...
yes, sorry, the Kaladas.
Kaladas, yeah. The Eversaw I've got has got the what are they called? It's like the Shakespeare frilly collar.
Yeah, he's got the old roughage or whatever.
The rough, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's my favourite one out of all the assassins, I think. And he was really good fun. Even in the last No Retreat, I remember playing the guy from Siege Studios, and the Eversaw dropped down and charged his warlord, and they had a couple of turns going toe to toe in combat. And eventually I was victorious, but then he died, and then he did a bio meltdown and killed a bunch of people. So it was good fun.
That's the thing, right? I mean, it's the sort of thing that people don't see coming a lot of the time these days. Eversaws. And that's why I like them. I think I don't know, it's just one of those things. Because the thing is, right, is what your army feels like it's lacking, if it's lacking anything, is something like that Eversaw moment, that thing that just throws itself at people and just goes, I'm a problem, and runs around being a problem. And then you have to address that problem.
Yeah, I mean, part of me wonders if it is less of a problem because actually the other opponent will have an abundance of anti-infantry units going to waste not shooting at infantry. So as soon as you give them, here's an infantry unit, they'll be like, brilliant, I'm just going to shoot all of these guys out of that because that's more efficient than shooting at these bloody tanks with my bolters.
True.
So kind of leaning more heavily into the armour is weirdly, I think, maybe more beneficial.
I like your counter argument there, Phil. That was very well considered.
You're welcome.
I think
me. The one weak point of my army is potentially not just grabbing objectives, because in theory all the objectives should be on the ground floor.
They have to be, yeah.
The rules of the game. However, I think with No Retreat, all the terrain tends to be preset and fixed, and they don't really like it moving the terrain around. So it'll be an interesting discussion to see how we then go, how do we place these objective markers if there's a massive ruin in the way or a big line of sight blocking thing like that? Are we going to place it on top? Are we going to place it sort of on the ground near it somewhere, which I think is what I'll have to suggest, because it's like, I've got 4 5-man squads and a couple of characters. I don't really have the ability to go up and down buildings or over hills or big bits of terrain very easily. I don't have anything with the fly keyword. I don't really have anything that deep strikes with unless I'm paying the points to outflank stuff. That could be a bit difficult because there's sometimes big bits of terrain. Like in one of them, there's like a massive crashed spaceship. which to go around will take you several turns. So, you could just get stuck on a bad map where, not bad per se, but like bad for my army because I've got to go around stuff because I can't go through ruins with the vehicles and stuff. So that could be a bit problematic. At one point, I was thinking about taking double Hades drills with engineers because even though it's not officially in the rules, the general consensus is just take your engineers with your Hades guys, and then I've got a bunch of deep striking guys with 2 damage shotguns if I overcharge them. So that was potentially a cool idea I toyed around with, again, keeping with the theme that it's all armoured, so it's another way of getting more troops in. But I kind of like the idea of not going too troop heavy because I think it just slows the game down, and I kind of want to have almost as little to move around the board as possible, just to kind of keep the game nice and speedy. Especially since I haven't actually played a game of Ninth with my Krieg yet, because I did a bunch of Minotaurs playtesting early doors, and then haven't had a game since.
Well, we'll get some playtesting in a couple of weeks' time, mate, and start to work on some of the synergies and the strategies, I'm sure. But I'm sure it'll be fine, mate. I mean, at the end of the day, it sounds like an interesting list, and it's a nice change of pace. And in a way, I'm happy that you ended up having to resort to returning to your Krieg, because that is your my
one love.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and there's enough Space Marine armies going. They don't need another one rocking up. As probably more likely, I would win more games with my Space Marines, but I'm quite happy to take my Krieg, and it's sort of focusing on the best bit of my army, which it tends to be the vehicles over my infantry. My infantry's okay painted, but my vehicles are like way better, if I was to be honest. So showcasing that off is a good thing, I think. And also it's been an excuse to paint up some tanks. So I'm currently painting up 2 of my new Lehman Russes with sponsons and a couple of Demolisher turrets, and a couple of other little kind of custom converted sort of tank crew members to go on top as well. So yeah.
Sounds awesome, man. Look forward to seeing the finished product. Are they going to be doing live streaming from this event, or are they just keeping it between the people there?
They tend not to do live streaming. I mean, maybe they would this time. I don't know if they did at the GTs. I think they might have. What they have done in the past is to sort of go around and film during the day, like a sort of snapshot, and like kind of create a cool montage video of the events. So you might see something like that. Maybe I think sometimes Pardo will have a few games with people, like kind of before, because No Retreat is from like Thursday to a Monday, but the actual tournament is predominantly Saturday, Sunday, but one game on Friday. So I think sometimes in the past he's had a few games with people in those off moments that they record for the SM Battle Reports YouTube channel. So some games might be shown, but I doubt they'll be from the actual tournament itself. And I guess because of the whole COVID thing, they've had to move venue, so that might make it a bit more difficult because they're not in their usual sort of setup.
Yeah, it makes sense, man. It seems weird because I know obviously they've started getting into the bat rep game this year, and they've been doing a lot of that stuff. So it seems like a surprising decision not to live stream that content when obviously they've got such high quality, content in terms of the players and the armies and everything that's kind of on display. But hey, that's their problem to worry about and deal with, not for us to concern ourselves with. But there you go, guys. That is Phil's No Retreat 9 Astra Militarum / Death Corps of Krieg army list. Hopefully you found that insightful and interesting. My estimate is that you probably go, I don't know, I think 3-2 this time, Phil, I reckon. Assuming it's a 5-game tournament.
Yeah, that's normally my standard. I think that's what I did last time.
But it would be a fantastic thing if you could win it for the boys. I say the boys, there's only me and you now, isn't there? So
Well, there's Richie and Tim.
there it is. The
that
faithful
other
ones.
guy, I guess. Yeah. There's yeah. I'll see how well I can do. There's I think it's just weirdly it's just me and Toke representing Guard. So there's two Astra Militarum players, and they're both Death Corps of Krieg players, which I find quite funny.
Well, indeed.
There's no standard Guard, I believe, this time around.
Clearly, what you need to do, Phil, is ensure that you at least do better than Toke. That's got to be the overarching achievement.
Well,
right?
I don't want to throw any sass or shade in his direction,
but he's rubbish.
But I think he was sort of second to last, maybe. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think he did too well last time.
So you're saying he's an awful player, unworthy of the Krieg?
He knowingly admits that his dice rolls are the worst, and he had last time a one player buy him a brand new set of dice, and then when I was playing him, because basically at the end of the event, and it was like 11 o'clock on the Sunday night, me and Toke were like, well, we haven't played yet, and we want a Krieg off. And we were playing then, and during that game, he rolled so badly. Someone else bought him another set of dice to help him improve his rolls. So yeah, we will no doubt have another Krieg off of the next one, whether that's during the event or beforehand, probably.
Throw your dice left-handed, Toke. Try that. See how that works out for you.
Do it in a different way. Yeah,
in a different way. Clearly, what you're doing is wrong. Change something about it.
For sure.
All right, cool. Well, there we go. Thanks very much for that, Phil. We're going to move on now to whatever it is that comes next. Transitional noise. Woo! And that's it, everybody. The end of episode 58 of the Look Out Sir Warhammer 40,000 podcast. And because me and Phil had to re-record the intro, I've promised him that this is going to be a relatively short wrap-up of episode 58. So with that in mind, Phil, how did you think the show went, buddy?
It was good. I mean, the rider took the biscuit, really, for the old Valrak segment. We had to pull together all our money to try and buy him those kittens. But, yeah, it was good.
He did near bankrupt us, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. But well worth it to get him on.
Well, exactly. If not only to, bask in the glory that is the potential audience that he will expose us to, right?
Yeah, one can hope.
One can hope. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Collaborations with people, because obviously there's a certain degree of cynicism around them, because ultimately they're only really done to try and obviously cross-pollinate and cross-promote and try and build greater awareness for yourself. It's a trick as old as time when it comes to, this kind of content creation gig. Get people on that are more important than you are, so as you can kind of bask in their glory, and then ultimately, ask them kindly to do a little bit of cross-promotion, that kind of stuff. Because, I mean, it's pretty reasonable to assert, Phil, that no one who listens to us regularly isn't at least already aware of him, right?
Probably, yeah. I mean, yeah.
The journey of discovery the journey of discovery is not going to be going the other way. It's not like we've got people who listen to us who have never considered watching Valrak. Although maybe we have, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not that deep into the analytics. I can't tell you where our audience segments and who is checking out who and so on and so forth. So maybe, just maybe he'll get 3 or 4 subscribers off the back of us. That's what we offer when it comes to that side of things. But I mean, look,
and sandwiches.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, being serious about it though, right? I mean, it was cool getting him on. I mean, genuinely, we reached out to Valrak. So Phil knew him from doing some butt flap stuff, right? Not butt flap, groin flap.
Groin flaps, yeah. So he's doing a custom chapter, which is the Sons of Dawn, and then reached out to me on Twitter because someone mentioned him to me, or mentioned me to him about like that kind of ultramarine style Tarouges, which kind of the groin skirts that have the studs going down them. And at the time, I hadn't actually made them in like kind of a production sense, but I'd already made some for myself and was showing them off on Instagram. So I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that for you. It was quite funny actually because I only planned to do 2 stars originally. So I've got some ones that are rounded, which are more Greek style, which I was doing for my Minotaurs, and then on a whim I did this pointed star with studs going all the way down, which is a bit more Ultramarines-esque, I guess. And then he had some concept artwork done where he had done kind of ones that were just like square flat with a single stud at the bottom. And I was like, oh, I can make those for you if you want. And he was like, yeah, cool. Oh, that'd be great. So I did them. And then once I put them on the shop, I was like, oh, they're all up there. You got 3 different styles. And he ended up buying the Ultramarines ones instead. Like they're not Ultramarines, but the more Roman style ones. So I was like, oh, I didn't need to spend ages doing those extra ones. But in a way, it's nice because I've got basically 3 different styles. There's round, pointed, square. Actually having the 3's like a nice little synergy. And there are other people that have been enjoying that sort of style. So it's kind of worked out in the end, even if he didn't use them for himself.
Yeah, exactly, man. And that's the thing, right? I mean, and off the back of that, I mean, essentially, I just thought, I'll just reach out to him, see what he's up to, see if I can spark up a conversation with him about some stuff. And yeah, I mean, genuinely a really awesome guy to chat to. I mean, a lot of respect for him. I mean, in as much as he's, becoming a more significant presence within the community, but the fact that he actually has time to actually sort of chat to people and converse and actually kind of, take the time to help out shows and people like ourselves who are, sort of trying to find our way in this community. I think, ultimately yourself and myself, Phil, have never really tried to sort of suggest that we're doing this because we want to be ultra successful at it. We're doing it because we're passionate about it and we enjoy talking to each other. And, it's a great excuse for us to get together and talk about 40K. But it's always great to get that sort of almost validation, I suppose, that someone's willing to come on and give you a bit of a stamp of approval, I suppose. Because, at the end of the day, him appearing on our show, whether he really listens to us or not, obviously, I'm confident he doesn't really listen to us. But, it does mean a lot because you do put yourself at some level of risk. I mean, we could have been, notorious within the community for being horrible and awful and no one likes us at all. And if that was the case, he took a bit of a risk there. But as it turns out, I think we're relatively liked. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a weird thing to talk about always because I sort of get into the sort of weird mindset. There's nothing more wonderful for me than the moments where people reach out to us and express their enjoyment of what we do. And a lot of the time when we go through, I don't want to call it like the treachery, but when we go through the normalcy of our day-to-day lives, it's quite awesome when you hear that you've sort of made an impact and made a difference. But it's equally really cool that you get a little bit of a sort of stamp of approval from people like Valrak who actually want to take the time to get involved. And, it's just cool. I enjoy it, man. I love this community. I love being part of it. I love contributing to it. And it's great when you meet someone like Valrak who wants to do the same thing, and people like Winters as well. I mean, that was always really refreshing with Winters when he came on because he was all about, helping out and he wanted to be on the show because he wanted to get involved because he was just doing us a favor, right? And that's what's super cool about this community, really, is that for the most part, everyone's pretty generous and pretty awesome to each other, which is always lovely, hey?
No, for sure.
Yeah. So that's been cool. But yeah, otherwise, man, I thought it was a good show. I like talking about Krieg stuff with you because I know you get really passionate about it. And actually, the more and more we talk about it, I've got to be honest with you, Phil, it's so hard not to want to collect guard at the moment when I talk to you about stuff, I've got so many ideas.
Well, it's good. It's weird. I was looking at the what was it on the Warhammer community website? They're talking about the top 10 ways to kill Space Marines, and one of them was Bulgren. And I was like, that really cool unit that has basically been the go-to unit since 8th edition, and still probably even more so in 9th edition because it's tough and durable and has an invuln save. And it's like, but I kind of can't take it in my army because it doesn't fit the theme and the lore. Even though I technically could take it, and I know a lot of people do. There's a really cool third-party ones by the Mortarian tank guy. Like, he's done some Krieg Ogrins basically, but I was just like, I couldn't bring myself to do it, but it'd be really cool if I did.
I think honestly, if I did an Astra Militarum army, I would almost certainly do Catachan, just because that is more kind of my speed when it comes to the history of my experiences with Imperial Guard or Astra Militarum, because ultimately, when I was a younger man playing 2nd edition Warhammer, the Catachan were essentially the default version of Imperial Guardsmen. And then if I was to do a Ogre squad, an Ogrin squad, I would definitely use the traditional Ogrins with the Ripper cannons or the Ripper guns.
Yes. See, that's the thing I find really disappointing, is that the Bullgrins are just so good, you don't see the Ogrins anymore, and they've basically been superseded. And it's like, make Ogrins good, make them have a decent save, like, make their gun just mental. Like, I've got some of the old metal Ogrins. Like, I think the sculpts still hold up reasonably well. Obviously, not as good as plastics and metal. But yeah, I just loved Ogrins as a kid. Like, I collected basically 2nd edition Imperial Guard, you know, where they all had sort of specs on, like, shades. And I painted them up in this weird kind of black color scheme with like orange, almost like tiger striped camo on them. But then eventually, when they did all the different regiments, I collected one of each. So I had, you know, Talon, Valhallan, Vostrian. Like, actually, maybe it didn't have Vostrian, but I had most of them, and I like that kind of mixed army where it was like one squad from every regiment, and it was like a conglomerate fighting together. My favourite, so if I was to do it myself, would be Praetorian.
Oh, really?
Because I just loved. I remember I've got the limited edition box set. Well, I probably don't have a box anymore, but I've got the models from the box set tucked away somewhere, and it's like I'd like to repaint them up. And they've got a bit of a die-hard, passionate fan base as much as Krieg, really.
Yeah, I kind of liked the sort of the successor to the Praetorian stuff, which was the Mordian Iron Guard, right? Because the Mordian Iron Guard are essentially similar
Different
sculpts.
hats.
Yeah, different hats.
Yeah.
Because the Mordians were always the ones that I was quite attracted to as well, in terms of like the idea of collecting a guard army. But again, it's one of those things, right? It's like, I think one of the things with the Ogryn kits, if we can go back to it, I think my only frustration with them as a plastic kit is, especially when they're the Bullgrins, they're very static, and that's one of the things that's really weird about it, is like, and it's weird to believe that they come out of the same box, because the actual Ogrins with the Ripper guns have got this really kind of like mad, dynamic kind of posing to them. But then when you look at them, when they've got a slab shield and a hand cannon or whatever it is, like Mega Man, they just look awful. That one guy on the front of the box who's got the mustache with his arm up in the air just looks terrible. It's like, I mean, fantastic that they're a great unit in game. I mean, you know, obviously that's a winner, but crikey. And also as well, I'm not super keen on their silhouette and their profile in these miniatures. I feel like in the old days they had a bit more of a kind of, you know, 360 visual, whereas I think when you see Ogrins or specifically Bolgrins from behind, they look really derpy and really sort of like, I don't know, they just look like
it's sort of like
farms.
weird that with the Bullgrins there's like two versions of them, because there's the slab shield ones with like the grenade gauntlet, and then there's the power maul and the kind of more almost like the force field shield. And it's like, even out of those two, I sort of prefer the slab shield because it's just big and beefy. But I don't think anyone really takes that version because it's just not as good.
Yeah.
Because you kind of want the close combat one. It's like I'd sort of like a Krieg equivalent, which is basically the theme of a trench cleaner from World War One, which is like a guy who's wearing some like tough bits of armor, and basically carrying a spiked stick, like a maul. Or I guess for Krieg it'd be a power maul, and maybe like a shield, and have him wearing the engineer's armor. So he's like I think Guard in general need better close combat units. Like they used to have Rough Riders, which they don't have anymore. I guess Krieg have them still, but beyond Bulgren, they don't really have a close combat unit. It's like, yeah, you've got Guardsmen. Catachan are slightly better because they've got +1 strength, but they don't have a dedicated close combat unit, with the exception of Bulgren. And it's like, that's too much of a crux for one whole army. It's like, if you think about the releases that AdMech got, it's like, oh, you want stuff that's good in combat? Great, you've got loads. You got some fast-moving shooting stuff? You got that. You want some stuff that can fly? Great, you've got everything, and you've got it in probably more than one variety. Whereas Guardsmen just have lots of bodies, lots of bog standard shooting. Nothing's particularly good at shooting, except maybe tank commanders. But it's just volume of fire. And then they've got one linchpin unit, which seems to be the Bulgren, but their whole army predominantly seems to revolve around if you're any kind of competitive player, it seems, and has been for the last couple of years. And it's just like, and it was the same issue when we talked about the Psychic Awakening, that they made the good units better and some of the bad units okay, but they didn't really concentrate on them. Like they gave more stratagems for Bulgrins, but they haven't done anything for Ogrins. Like, I don't think I've seen any built models, like anyone play them, like, ever.
Guaranteed, though, Phil, Ogrins will be exceptional in their
I hope so, because they're such, to me, like, they are quintessential iconic unit of Guardsmen. They're kind of up there with the Lehman Russ in terms of, like, what I remember of my army as a kid. Like, Lehman Russ tank, Ogrins, and, like, just... And Rough Riders, like Ogrins and Rough Riders.
And Rattlings.
Oh, Rattlings as well, actually, yeah. Yeah, they were cool. And you still get them, though, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like that. There was a lot of cool things in, like, old era Guard where you used to, like, going back to maybe even Rogue Trader, you used to have the Beastmen. Like, they were, like, just part of Abhumans. I think now they'd probably be more consigned to Chaos Renegade cultists. Well, they are, because of Black Saint Fortress. But they kind of tease them in there. But they used to be, like, Abhumans, like the Squats and the Guard and stuff. Sorry, not Guard. Squats and Ogrins and Rattlings. It'd be interesting if they ever bring those sorts of units back, or just sort of focus on them a bit more.
Yeah. I mean, who knows what's around the corner for those guys, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there speculating that you're going to see a whole new range of, like, Guardsmen coming up and, you know, adding in a third variable, doing away with, like, Catachan, or not doing away with... Catachan, doing, you know, updating or giving us a new form of, like, base kit, like, you know, not just Cadian anymore. It's going to be some new variable that's got more, you know, options to it. But yeah,
I mean, it'd be quite easy for them to do a base kit that's kind of Mordian-esque, because then that would probably cover Mordian, Praetorian, and a couple of the others, like maybe even Steel Legion. And then basically do a bunch of different head options that you can swap out. And it'd be cool to see a really cool modular kit, and I've probably been banging on about that for years, and I'm sure it's possible.
Well, indeed. I mean, the only thing I really love about the Catachan, though, when I sort of look at it as a range, is I think they've just got some utterly incredible characters. You've got, obviously, Sergeant Harker, which is just, you know, an incredible character, with dude just walking around with a massive... heavy bolter, Ironhand Strachan, who is just, again, super charismatic, awesome character, and then obviously Sly Marbo. You know, there's just so many really awesome additions to a Catachan army that makes it quite fun from a kind of characterful perspective. And
yeah. I think Catachan have always visually looked really amazing and 100% distinct from, like, any other. Like I said, Praetorian, Mordians, and a couple of others do look very samey, whereas Catachans they're the guys from Predator. basically. Like, that's clearly what they're meant to be.
Yeah, I suppose the only consistent awful thing about the Catachans is the fact that that Jungle Fire kit that you get for the Catachans is tired, right? Like, they've obviously got that command squad box, but that standard kit is rough.
For sure. I sort of think if they were to redo Guard in any way, it would probably be the Catachan box. Because you do a standard box that also has a heavy weapon team, you then just ply off that heavy weapon team into a separate box set as well. So you've kind of got that as a separate kit. I mean, Sentinels are kind of, I doubt they'd redo them. I mean, they could redo things like Sentinels, Lehman Russes, and Hellhounds, and I'm sure they'd do an amazing job if they did. But the kits hold out really well. So I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't.
I mean, to put it in context, Phil, the Catachan Jungle Fire kit is so old that the guns aren't attached to the arms. So, if you're building a Catachan squad, you've got to cut the handles off the las guns and glue them onto the hands of the models.
Madness.
That is a kit from 1998 or whatever it is. That is old. That is a old kit. So, but if it wasn't for that, I might consider them. It's on the to-do list. I do love the old Guard. Anyway, we said we were going to do this quick, and we haven't. We've gone on for about 20 minutes, so let's just end the show there. What do you reckon, Phil?
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.